We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Happy New Year. It's the first episode of 2018.
It certainly is, and Happy New Year to you. I spent all of the Christmas break that my wife took off sick.
Yep.
So she was really, really happy about that. Had all these plans of things that we were going to do as a family, and yeah, none of that happened.
You did it just to spite her.
Yeah, oh, it was terrible too. I wasn't. I tried. Like, she's like, I want to go. I promised these people we're gonna go climbing. So can you go climbing with us? I'm like, yeah, I'll just belay or whatever. But by the time I got back from that, I felt like 10 times worse than I did when I left. It's just what it is. Those of you that are watching the video on YouTube will notice that there is something strange about my shoulder, and that is because we have our brand new AVRant mascot / pet for the family here. Her name is Daisy. She's a bearded dragon. She's about 6 months old, so she's just a baby. She's very small and very tiny and very cute. But she's also very sleepy because it's late at night. So she's just going to kind of hang out and probably sleep on my shoulder. I will try not
because
to
of the
knock her
whole
off.
split screen thing, you might not see Daisy throughout the entire show. As Tom leans to his left, Daisy will disappear into my image.
That's right.
That's how things are going to go.
So we will see. Daisy's around for right now, but we'll see if we bring her back again. We'll see how she does. She tends to hang out with me quite a bit. So, how was your thing? How was your Christmas, Rob?
It was really, really nice. It was really good. I had family over. We have a whole, extended family. So we kind of split in two. So we had one group who was out in Richmond and another group who was over at my parents' place. But we FaceTimed throughout part of it so that we could all kind of spend dinner together there, and it was really nice. And niece and nephew really enjoyed their Christmas gifts. So all around, a very nice time. How about yours?
AVRant got some special gift delivery for Christmas from one of our listeners, James. James sent us a couple of things. One of them, I'm going to try to do this without knocking Daisy off my shoulder. One of the things he sent us was, I think this is just for Rob, was this. Is this too big?
Hold on.
Can you see it? Can you see
I
the
can
whole
see
thing?
it. Yes.
Can you see it if I do that?
Okay, your AV and home theater questions answered. Tom, Andry, Rob H, Austin with an E. Very nice. It's a little bit like Anne with an E, that TV show.
So this is a very thick, very plush mouse pad. For those of you that are seeing this, it says right here in the corner, each only $2.95. Okay, so James has a company where they basically print logos on a whole range of different products. So he sent us a box that had about, I don't know, maybe 25, 30, 50.
Oh, really?
I don't know. It's a whole bunch of these things, and then right next to it was this little, I'm trying to do this without knocking poor little Daisy off my shoulder. All right, iSound speaker, which we had talked about a million years ago.
Yep,
and it's got our AVRant logo. So I got about 6 of those, I think.
Ah, okay.
That we will somehow figure out how I can send to people as for winners. But there was another stack right after that of this.
Okay. Loudspeaker decoupling riser. Yeah, okay. It looks very similar. Like if you only saw them from the edge or from the back, you might think it's a mouse pad.
It's not. Okay, so for those of you that aren't watching this right now, and because Rob's doing a terrible job of bringing this is...
well, I can't see it.
It's exactly the same thing. It is the AVRant mouse pad, except in the bottom corner it says loudspeaker decoupling riser, and each only $199.95.
Yes, yeah.
So, and it says in very small print here next to our logo, increases stereo imaging, dramatically warmer sound, increases tonal range, decreases harmonic distortion, removes bloat in the mid-bass frequencies, increases depth and detail, brings vocals more forward for less fatigue, reduces harshness in upper range, adds punch to the mid-bass, overall better response signature, 2018 stereophile product of the year. Now that last one... We could maybe get in trouble for that.
No kidding.
But I got just as many of those as I got of the other ones.
Well, we'll have to do a blind listening comparison and see if that dramatic increase in price, strongly affects the performance.
I think it will for those that decide to purchase that for $200.
I mean, how if you can charge that much, how could it not be justified? It's not as though prices are arbitrary.
That's right. So these are amazing, and thank you, James, very much. I laughed and laughed and laughed when I saw them, so that was great. And we're going to I'll figure out a way to give all these things away. I don't know.
Cool.
I don't know how we'll do that. Maybe someday we'll go to CES.
I would like one.
Well, I'll send you one. I'll send you a couple. I'll send you a whole bunch. Something. You got to do something.
That's fun.
So yeah. So. Christmas here was great. New Year's was fine. We've been all sick. My family's just been sick. We've just been passing it around from person to person. So I think the last child got better today.
Okay.
So they have another week off of school, but I'm working, my wife's working, so we won't be able to do anything with them, which is probably for the best. They have been asking for a pet, and this is why Santa brought us little Daisy here. And we will. So far, 2 of the 3 kids are like, nope, don't need to touch that. Not interested. And the other one, I told him, because he was one of the ones that's pushing so hard for a dog. I'm like, well, if you wanted a dog and you won't even interact with Daisy, then why would we think about giving you a dog? Plus, it's like Arctic winter for Florida here. It's like 50 degrees outside right now. Everybody's losing their minds. Like, nobody wants to go outside for any reason whatsoever. I'm like, somebody would have to be walking this dog right now if we had gotten a dog. So
now, is Daisy named after any? Is that Daisy after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daisy after Daisy Ridley or something?
No. We went through a lot of different names. I wanted to name her Molly, but we have a friend named Molly, and my wife didn't like that. And then Lizardette was bandied about. Now I shot that one down.
Yeah.
Lizzie, Izzy, all those I shot down. I'm like, we cannot be that lazy. So my wife wanted something that ended with a Y or an E, hard
Sure.
E. She wanted a girly name because if she's the only girl in the house, she wanted another girl in the house. So she didn't want it to be something that wasn't girly. So somehow Daisy got accidentally said, and then it sort of everybody liked it. So
that's how it usually goes.
And we went with that.
Right.
Yeah. So this is AVRant, the podcast that doesn't just talk about Christmas and my lizard. It talks about your home theater and AV questions. We answer them. To get them answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/avrantpodcast. YouTube.com/c/avrant. I think that's right. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I haven't said it in 2 weeks. You can contact us directly. You can email Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter's at avrant_Tom. I've got a cough drop in my mouth, so I am dealing with that as it's flying around as I'm trying to talk very quickly. We also have our producer, Austin. Austin answers our AVRant question line, the question at avrant.com. He has his Twitter is at Austin, TEN Pond. Which is what the joke was about on the mouse pad down there. And he has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast solely about people's reactions to movies. It's not about movies. It's about watching people react to the movies. Mm-hmm. So right now they scour the comment sections and then review those comments. Especially about things like The Last Jedi, where people are all upset because of...
It's not like the YouTube React videos where people record their own face. No. It's written down comment reactions.
Yes, they read the comments out loud, and then they react to them. And then that's the We Watch Movies podcast.
We Watch Movies.
I did see The Last Jedi, though.
You did?
I did. I saw it on Christmas Day with the kids. I was getting progressively sicker as the movie went on, but I did see it, and it was... I'll need to see it
a second time before we get on to Austin's podcast and give our thoughts.
Yes. I'm not going to see it a second time. I'm going to have to go with just my one because I think I can get the money for that. But before we get into this, let's thank our listeners of the week. It's become a listener of the week. You have to support this podcast in some way. So first, we want to thank Steve, Mike, Andrew, Lance, and I'm going to say Yuri. I'm going to say Yuri because it's dudes from Russia. So that looks like a Yuri to me. It can't be Lurie. Because I think we don't know. We don't know. But they went to www.avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and left us a PayPal donation. Those donations go into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and other such things. Probably the shipping of what these, when I start sending these things out to people, that shipping will come from there. So we want to thank Steve, Mike, Andrew, Lance, and Yuri for their donations.
Yeah, Steve, Mike, Andrew, Lance, Yuri. We think it's Yuri. We apologize if we're pronouncing that wrong, but thank you so much for those donations. Really appreciate it.
We also want to thank our patrons. If you go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, I believe, we have now 48 patrons, and those people have allowed Patreon to deduct monthly a sum of money from them and give most of it to us. So those out of those 48 that are over there, we know that Grant, Benjamin, Ted, and Christian are among them. So thank you to all of our patrons, especially Grant, Benjamin, Ted, and Christian.
Yeah, Grant, Benjamin, Ted, Christian, thanks so much for signing up, and thank you so much to all the other Patreon patrons. That's it's really cool to see. Really happy to see that that folks are supporting the podcast that way. So very cool. Thanks.
Yes. And if you can't support the podcast financially, it's always just think of some way to support us and let us know. You know, obviously James supported us with all of this great semi-gag gifty stuff, which I love. But Travis let SVS know that his PB12 NSD purchase was thanks to us. And Larry offered to help out fellow AVRant listener Mike with some bipole surround speakers if Mike was still interested in bipole surround speakers. So thank you, Travis, Larry, and James.
Yeah, Travis, thanks for talking us up to SVS. Larry, thanks so much for the offer. I happen to know the end of that story was that Mike decided to go with monopole speakers after all, but it was very nice for Larry to offer to help out like that. And James, I really like those gifts. That's excellent. So I'm very eager to get a mouse pad.
Yes, they are very thick and plush.
Yeah, they'll work.
My mouse pads are not this nice.
They're worth the full $199.95 asking price.
I believe so. If you're going to put them under a speaker, but really, if you really want to get the full effect, especially if you have a floor standing speaker, you're going to need to double up.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's just
you might need two layers of 4.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So you need the front and the back. If you have a real wide speaker, you're going to need two underneath each foot area.
Well, look, if your speakers cost $50,000 a pair, what's $1,600 per speaker to properly decouple it? Not bad.
I feel like it's a deal. In the news, we'll go through this quickly. Netflix now supports an HDR10 playback on Windows 10 PCs. You need a KB Lake 7th generation Intel CPU because of all the DRM, and you can use either the Windows 10 app or the Edge browser, which, God help you if you have to use the Edge browser.
I had not really realized that HDR10 wasn't working until now. Somewhere in the back of my head, I thought it already was, but no, it's official now. So, but you need a new processor and one of the motherboards that also supports all the DRM stuff. So, yeah. They're not making it easy to do 4K HDR on a PC, but it can be done. It can be done.
Sony's Dolby Vision update is now scheduled for mid to late January for its TVs that include the X1 Extreme video processor. So if you have one of those TVs, you can look forward to that.
Yeah, late 2017 kind of came and went, didn't it? So they didn't hit that deadline, but now they're saying mid to late January.
And LG will be showing an 88-inch 8K resolution OLED TV at CES this year. They've also announced their plans to open an OLED manufacturing facility in China to help increase their production capability, or capacity, I suppose. So 88-inch 8K.
Yeah. That's, well, obviously it's a prototype. They're just showing it can be done. Previously,
it's the same thing that happened when they came out with 4K. I saw 4K, 4 years before it ever even was talked about. But it was in the display. It was a display. I swear, my memory of this is kind of hazy, but it felt like I was being walked through like a little like partitions, and they had it on the partition, so you were already standing like 2 feet away from the thing, which was pretty impressive, really, because that's the way you should see 4K on this.
Yeah,
I'm on like a 50-inch display, which is what this thing was. So. All right, comments from our listeners. Greg wanted to thank us for all our suggestions for his basement rebuild after he discovered a leak behind the bulkhead at the front of his theater room. He'll be checking on his furnace and air conditioner specs to see if they have the capacity to allow him to add another air register for his theater. The ducting is already in a convenient location, so he's hoping they're up for the task. Benjamin wanted to thank Raid5 from our AVRant.com comment section, who suggested using Zone 2 in addition to one of the main Zone's stereo inputs on Benjamin's Onkyo receiver to allow it to act as a 4-channel amp. Rather than only a 2-channel amp, Benjamin says it's working wonderfully, and he's rocking his 7.2.4 setup with the Onkyo, now powering his front, left, center, and right just the way he wanted.
Yeah, very cool.
And Matt on Twitter, I guess this is going to be a picture for those of you who are watching the full video on YouTube at a later date. Matt on Twitter had the enticing present sitting in his family room for weeks that he finally got to open on Christmas. And if you can't see this, it is a big cardboard box with a Power Sound Audio logo on the side of it. So you know what that is. That's a big old sub, Hoss.
Yeah, I can't help but notice, though, it's pretty square, and it looks like it would actually fit through a door, so it must be one of their sealed models.
Yeah, it's obviously sealed. It's not like oblong shaped, unless it's deep. You know,
unless it's lying down, and we just can't, because of the perspective of the photo, can't see.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the sealed ones.
TL. TL just wanted to share a very good customer service experience with Martin Logan. He owns a Martin Logan Descent 1 sub that he discovered was powering on and lighting up and not actually woofing. He got a quick response when he emailed, and after trying some troubleshooting, they sent him a replacement circuit board rather than making him ship the 100-pound subwoofer to them for repair. It took him about a half an hour to replace the board himself, and that did the trick. No charge for any of it, even though he was out of warranty, so he can't ask for more than that. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
George, unfortunately, was on the other end of the spectrum. George bought a, I'm not going to say it, Audio Magni 3 headphone amplifier. He knows that I hate their brand name because it makes me curse on the podcast, so I'm trying not to do that. Now, George dislikes them altogether. They were apparently out of stock of their regular power supplies, so they upgraded him to a multi-outlet unit that is 3 times the size of the Magni amp itself. He was disgusted by its appearance and had no space for it, but they wouldn't exchange it for a regular power supply as it was an upgrade. He chose to return the whole order, but he had to pay for the shipping fees both ways, and they charged him a 25% restocking fee. On top of all of that, he gave it a try before returning it, and he was picking up radio interference, so that was that.
Man, oh man. Yeah.
That, you know, for the amount of bad press you can get, it's really not even worth it. You just make it right. If you just make it right, you know, the worst case is that people say thank you or whatever, and that's it. You never hear it. No one ever hears about it. But the worst case is that you don't make it right, and they bad talk you forever. For literally ever. Like every chance they get, every chance this guy gets to post online, somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to order this." Well, just make sure that they don't upgrade you, because they upgrade you, they screw you. They screw you, and the product sucks.
It's really too bad, because I liked being able to recommend their headphone amplifiers. But hey, now that Monoprice has their headphone amplifiers, there's your alternative. So yeah.
All right, let's get into the questions here. We're going to start with Jason. Jason upgraded a Marantz SR7011 receiver, so now his Denon 4810 is just sitting around not being used. He had pre-wired his house for 6 zones of whole house audio, Cat 5e for a control panel, and a speaker wire to each of the 6 rooms, all going back to a single spot in his basement, but he never got around to hooking it all up. The Denon 4810 can power 3 zones by reassigning its amps, so is it crazy to consider plugging in 3 Chromecasts into the 4810 and using it to power 3 of his 6 available zones? With the Chromecast, you'd be able to stream music from laptops, tablets, phones, all that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see any problem with this. In fact, if you can double up some of those zones, you know, you might have 3 zones, but you know, the rooms would be connected together. I mean, it's better than what you got now.
For anywhere where you would always want to have them both playing at the same time. Any
right?
2 rooms, yeah, you certainly could.
You know, the kitchen and the living room both. I mean, it seems like they would be both together. You know, maybe whatever. But.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any reason. I mean, this would certainly function. You know, it's got. I think that one actually has 9 amps built in, if I'm remembering correctly. It's got at least 7 anyway, so you can certainly power.
They usually have at least 3 zones too at that level.
Yeah,
so
it's got 3 zones, and I looked on the back, and you can definitely reassign the surround back and I think it was labeled like front height because it's a Dolby Pro Logic 2Z going back then. So, but you could definitely reassign those 2, so that way you could have a main zone with your front, left, right, and then powered zone 2 and powered zone 3, stereo in each of those 3 zones. So yeah, that'll certainly function.
Excuse Excuse me. I am going to be coughing throughout this podcast. I apologize. I can do nothing about it. So he asked, would he need to leave the 4810 on all the time? There's not a real way for his Chromecast to turn it on and off, right? And that as far as I know, is correct.
Yeah, but there are apps for the Denon itself.
Right.
So if you're controlling it from a phone or a tablet, or from a computer for that matter, because it can do the over the network control.
Well, if he's got the Cat 5 already run, he may be able to put some sort of trigger to turn it on and off too, right?
Via the network control?
Yeah.
That I'm not sure on. But the point is you can control it via app or via network. So, I mean, it would be an extra step, right? You would have to go into the Denon control app and turn it on first, and then switch over to whatever service you want to use, and then cast that to the Chromecast.
I just leave it on all the time.
It's a few extra steps.
Yeah, it's not going to be using a ton of power anyways.
Yeah.
It's just going to kind of be sitting there doing nothing. So I would consider leaving it on all the time. It's not really going to hurt anything. It's not going to heat up. It's not going to heat up that much. I mean, you think to yourself, "Oh, it's this big thing. It's going to be on." Yeah, but the amps aren't doing anything. Mm-hmm. They're just sitting there. So there's not going to be that much power flowing through it. It's just waiting. Yeah. So
but if you really want to, then all that other stuff.
Brandon wrote to us previously asking if he should purchase Golden Ear Triton 2 towers to take advantage of the built-in subwoofers or save some money, going with a similar and smaller Triton 7 towers. He was also asking about trying to use dual subwoofers in his open concept space. Speaking of which, what's up with Austin? He found a crazy deal on a pair of used Triton 2s and a pair of Triton 7s, so he went ahead and bought both so that he could audition them for himself. Now, for everybody else that's out there who's thinking, dude bought 2 pairs of speakers, this is actually a really great opportunity for him. Mm-hmm. That he knew that he wanted the 2s, but he thought he might want the 7s. Mm-hmm. So if he could do this, why not do it? So his plan there is to sell whatever pair he decided not to keep. If you got a good deal on them, worst case scenarios, he probably breaks even.
Yeah,
which is great. He and his wife both ended up liking the 2s ever so slightly more than the 7s, although he suspects the difference in height might actually have something to do with that. You know what would help out with that? Mouse pad.
You need a stack.
You need a static. What is it called? A static decoupler, a decoupling riser, loudspeaker decoupling riser, or maybe AVRant. $200 a pop. Boy, let's go. All right. Sorry. It might be a difference in height. It might actually have something to do with that, since the 2s are taller height, but its tweeter more in line with their ear level. And if the price for the used 2s had been so low, they wouldn't have even been worth it over the 7s anyhow. So that's good. I think our suggestion was to go with the 7s.
Yeah, so, and I mean, if like he's basically saying he agrees if you were paying full retail price, it would have been like, okay, we like the 2s a little bit more, but not enough to justify the full retail price. But since he got such a good deal, why not to go with the ones you like, even if it's only a little bit better? Why not if it's affordable? Absolutely.
So he also tried our suggestion to experiment with the PB12 NSD and Martin Logan subs that he already owns, just to see if dual subs would be worth it in his space and what sort of placement might work best in his open concept room. The 2 subs on either end of his couch worked really well, so he bought an SB12 NSD on sale from SVS. His wife did not want the big PB12 NSD out in the room, though, so went back into the front left corner. He tried putting the SB12 NSD behind the couch, diagonally across from the PB12 NSD, but that resulted in a huge peak in one seat and a huge null in the seat right next to it. So he even tried moving the SB12 NSD over to the left wall, and everything sounded much more even. He couldn't believe the difference. So when we talk about dual subwoofer placement in the oddly shaped room being tricky, he really gets it now. But thankfully, he thinks his new bass sounds amazing. That is another question. This is all statements. So, yay. Good.
Yes.
I'm glad. So the open concept space is about 6,000 cubic feet. There's a chance you can convince his wife to let him install a barn door style door that would close off about 3,000 of those 6,000 cubic feet. Would his combo of PB12 NSD and SB12 NSD be able to pressurize 3,000 cubic feet of air? Would it be worth all the work?
It'd be close. It'd be very close.
This is what I'm going to... When I read this question the first couple of times, because my kids were being loud and it was hard for me to concentrate. He's happy with the bass as it is right now.
Yes.
I am disinclined to suggest that you change the dimensions of your room when you're happy with your bass. You could add this door. First of all, I love those barn door style doors that you're talking about. I'm absolutely convinced they're going to rattle like crazy.
I mean, if you get really heavy solid ones with an excellent track system that's damped, it can be done without rattling. But yeah, you're right. If you go for less expensive, it's almost certainly going to rattle.
I would think that this, if you're already happy with the bass that you're having, I would stick with what you. I would just don't touch it, man. Just don't touch it. Let it go. Put this door up here. First of all, the PB12 NSDs I feel are pretty close, but the SB12 I don't see how that's going to fill up 3,000 cubic feet.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be close. It'd be close. Certainly closer than the full 6,000 cubic feet.
But you're taking in the placement that you're happy with right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you'd have to redo all that.
You got to redo all that. You'll have to redo all that, which means you may not be able to find a good placement in the setup with the door on it. So you're really taking a big risk, I think. And if you're already happy with what you've got, I would just stick with it. So he says he's actually getting tactile bass now with the SB12 NSD close to his seats, but he figures that this still isn't pressurization. So is it worth trying to achieve pressurization in 3,000 cubic feet, or maybe just try to pressurizing all 6,000 cubic feet with much bigger subs? You're not getting bigger subs in here. Your wife's not going to let you, so that's off the table. And I don't think you want to pressurize 6,000 cubic feet. Anyhow.
I don't think you want to pressurize your kitchen and your dining room and that starts to become unpleasant to live in. Yeah.
You're right. It's not pressurization, but who cares? All right. That's the way I feel about it. Who cares? You have good bass and you're feeling it and you're happy. I would just walk away from this one, to be honest with you. I
can't disagree. I mean, we're probably to blame because we've talked about the whole pressurization thing. And I mean, the subs that we talk about putting in medium-sized rooms, most people would think we're nuts.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That's because we're after this whole complete pressurization thing. I can't say we're overselling it. I mean, it's very cool when it can be done, but it's not worth upending your life over. That's where I come down on it. It's like maybe at some point, I don't know, you free up a spare bedroom or you move to a different house where you can have a smaller dedicated room, and that's when you go after it. I think where you are right now in this open concept living space, it's not the time to make that your goal. It's upending too much of your life.
I would, like Rob said, we love our bass and we're all about pressurizing the space and feeling it. I just don't see that, it's worth what you're about to go through, which could be in the end futile. You could end up with a door on this thing and you're technically pressurizing it, but it doesn't sound that good. I don't want you to end up there. So let's just let this one go. So he asks some crossover questions. So let's say he sets the front, left, right speakers to large. He says, don't worry, he's not actually doing this. He's just curious how it all works. And if he sets the subwoofer output to just LFE, do the low frequencies from all the other speakers get played by the front, left, right speakers in that situation? Or do the low frequencies from all the other speakers only get sent to the subwoofer? So anything that's crossed over should be sent to the subwoofer. That's where they're going. The front, left, and right are going to play full range, and then the subwoofer is going to play whatever's crossed over into it plus the LFE.
If you read the descriptions, usually what it's saying is if you test LFE, then the subwoofer is getting all the
right.
So subwoofer up to LFE, it's only going to the subwoofer. It's not being played by the main speakers, and all the bass in the main speakers, which in this scenario have been set to large, that bass is only going to the front, left, and right speakers that have been set to large. You're getting none of the bass from your front, left, right out of the subwoofer in this scenario. Right. It's when you use that LFE plus mains subwoofer output setting, that's when bass from the large towers also gets duplicated in the subs, and bass from all the speakers set to small gets sent to both the towers and the subwoofers. That's what that LFE plus mains setting is for.
Plus mains is also get the LFE out of the
no, the LFE still only goes to the subwoofers. Goes to the sub.
Yeah,
so it's a little bit of a tricky thing, but I can see why it's worth asking, because it isn't super intuitive how all that goes.
Yeah. So he says, let's say he sets his front, left, and right speakers to small, but he gives them a lower crossover frequency than the center speaker. As a hypothetical, let's say the front, left, and rights are set to a 60 hertz crossover, while the center is set to 90. Is everything below 90 from the center being sent only to the subwoofer, or all the frequencies from 60 to 90 being sent to the center, to the front, left, and right speakers, and everything below 60 being sent to the sub? No, there's basically anything that's set to small, everything below whatever the crossover point goes to the sub.
Correct.
So nothing's going to get sent to your front, left, and right speakers if they're sent to small. Like,
correct.
Ever. I don't think.
That's right.
Any reason. Yeah. So
in this scenario, in your front, left, right, everything that's below 60 is being sent to the subwoofer. And the center speaker, everything in this scenario below 90 is being sent to the subwoofer and nowhere else. That's just whatever. It's small, below the crossover, goes to the sub.
Yeah. D has a PS4 Pro connected to a Yamaha RX V675 receiver via HDMI. He has 9 speakers in the sub connected to the Yamaha, but it's a 7.1 receiver, so he has to choose whether he's using surround, back, or front presence speakers at any given time. This 675 does not do Atmos. So what should his audio output settings look like on his PS4 Pro? What's the difference between PCM and bitstream outputs, and what are the differences between the various bitstream output options? Bitstream Dolby, bitstream DTS, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so no source on Earth knows what a presence speaker is. So
right. Not in the original signal, yeah.
No, so there's never going to be an option to PCM out the presence channel. So no matter what happens in when your stuff hits a Yamaha, it has to extrapolate the presence channel when it gets that information. So he can do 9 speakers or 7 speakers. He can do 7 speakers.
He can do 7 speakers actually playing at a time. He can physically connect 9 to the back of the receiver, but 7 of them can be in use.
I would bitstream it out and let your receiver deal with it, because especially if you're going to be changing configurations on the fly from time to time, then I would be bitstream it if I could.
Well, so the PS4 and the PS4 Pro are actually kind of limited in what they can do audio-wise. So let's start with just physical disc. All right, if you're talking DVDs and Blu-rays, because PS4 Pro cannot play Ultra HD Blu-rays, it's DVDs or Blu-rays. Within the disc player, so there's the separate disc player software whenever you actually put in a disc. Once a disc is actually spinning and playing, you can press the start button, brings up the options. You can go over to the settings that are within the physical disc player only, and there you can choose Bitstream Direct audio output. So from a physical disc, you can get your Dolby True HD, DTS HD master audio. In his case, that's as far as it would go because his receiver doesn't support Atmos or DTS X. So you can get Dolby True HD or DTS HD master audio from physical discs. But from everything else, from the games, from all the streaming services, everything else, you don't have the option to output the original bitstream. It's not an option in the PS4 or the PS4 Pro. The PS4 or PS4 Pro will always decode all other audio besides physical discs into PCM. Now, after it's done that, you have the option to tell it to re-encode it into vanilla Dolby Digital and output a Dolby Digital bitstream, or re-encode it into vanilla DTS and output a DTS bitstream. That's what the 2 bitstream options are, Bitstream Dolby and Bitstream DTS. That is the PS4 decoding the audio into PCM and then re-encoding it into either vanilla Dolby Digital or vanilla DTS. There is no option to get a Dolby Digital Plus bitstream, a Dolby True HD bitstream, a DTS HD bitstream. You can't get those out of anything other than a physical disc. So the actual highest quality audio you can get is the PCM output, the linear PCM setting, because that's it decoding whatever was coming in from the streaming service or the game, and it's just decoding it into PCM, which is lossless. You haven't lost any quality at that point. Once it re-encodes it into Dolby Digital or DTS, that is another lossy process on top of whatever was in the original signal. So your highest quality is linear PCM. And then for physical discs, it's what's actually...
So will it extrapolate that presence channel from a 5 point... if it's getting 5.1 PCM in, it will be able to create a presence channel from that? Let
me think here. Okay, so it's decoded into PCM, whatever that is. That gets sent into your Yamaha, and then if you set the Yamaha to the listening mode that includes present speakers, then yeah, it'll be able to upmix it to that.
Okay. Well, then I guess that's your best bet right there.
Yep.
So... I mean, could he set everything to PCM? He could.
He could set everything to PCM. Yeah, because even on the discs, since he doesn't have Atmos, or DTS-X, that really won't make a difference. It's still
Right.
lossless, and it's still 7.1 max. So yeah, in this particular case, linear PCM all the way around would actually work completely fine. Very confusing, though. I appreciate the question.
Right. I'm always confused, obviously.
Yeah.
Chris has a local has local content with Atmos audio stored on his Plex server. This is a question totally not for me. Is there any way to use an Xbox One to play that Atmos content? Jesus Christ. Let me tell you something about the Xbox One. And it's stupid audio settings. Okay? I hate them. I hate them so much. I hate them. But you can't get Atmos out of the PS3. So at least I couldn't. I tried. I didn't try very hard because I had guests over.
Out of the PS3? Well, with a physical disc, you can.
I thought so too, and I tried to, but it wouldn't show up as Dolby Atmos on my receiver, so I didn't trust it.
On a PS3, it should from a physical disc. It has to be within the player settings, not within the system settings.
I know. I tried to find it. Didn't get. I had guests over.
That's beside the point anyway.
Beside the point. So, is there any way to use an Xbox One to play that Atmos content, Plex or otherwise? And if not, could a Raspberry Pi 3 do it? Now, I know you can do it with the NVIDIA Shield, right? Because that's one of the ones that can do it.
Yes.
But I don't know that the Xbox One can do it, and I'm not sure about Raspberry Pi at all.
Okay, so Xbox One, the hardware is capable of outputting the full bitstream, so capable of outputting Atmos. And we know that some of the apps, in fact, I contacted Chris Petrin, who's always up on the latest Microsoft stuff because he's one of their testers. So Netflix app, Voodoo app, they support Atmos audio output right now. So they can do it. The Plex app hasn't been updated to do it yet. So that's actually the stumbling block. Now, that's just on Plex to eventually update their Xbox One app because there is no technical reason why it can't be done. It just needs to be done. Somebody has to update the software, the Plex software. So right this second as we're recording this, no, but it's very possible in the future because the Plex guys are on top of this type of stuff and they update things pretty regularly. So it just depends on how far down the list of priorities the Xbox One app is. Could you do it with a Raspberry Pi 3? Yes. The Raspberry Pi 3 can run the embedded platforms version of Plex Media Player, and that is what you would need to use. It has to be Plex Media Player and Raspberry Pi 3 that runs the embedded platforms version, and it can output the full bit stream, so that could do it. As Tom mentioned, the NVIDIA Shield could also do it, and we do now have Kodi just coming out on the Xbox One, but they're calling it like alpha, so it's very not polished at this point. So similar situation to Plex. I don't actually know. I haven't tried using the alpha version of Kodi on my Xbox One. I'm not quite willing to risk that.
I was gonna say that sounds awful. The alpha versions are always so buggy. I mean, like crazy buggy too. Like but possessed by the devil.
If and when that starts working, that could be another potential way for you to do this because Kodi can do it and the Xbox One hardware is capable of it. So yeah.
Greg is looking to buy a new pre-pro and amp. He wants a 7.2.4 Atmos DTS-X setup. The system will be primarily for movies, not a lot of music. And his speakers are all Klipsch reference Premiere Series with a. I'm sorry, that was like a roadblock. That was like a huge, speed bump in the middle of that sentence, and I hit that Klipsch. I went, what? And a Klipsch reference Premiere Series with a pair of 15-inch Klipsch subs. He's considering the Yamaha CX-A5100 with their MX-A 5000 11-channel amp or the Emotiva XMC1 with their XPA11 Gen 3 amp. However, he's open to other suggestions. What do we recommend? How far away are you sitting from these speakers? Because these are Klipsch. I mean, but okay. I'm going to disregard that there's no situation I can envision where you actually need external amplification for Klipsch speakers, and just go with the fact that you want it, and that's why we're getting it. Okay. That being said, there's with the two choices you've given us. I like the Yamaha better, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, the XMC1, for all the promises Emotiva has made for at least a year and a half, I think going on 2 years, pretty close now, that the XMC1 will be able to go all the way to 7.2.4 Atmos. It can't. It still can't at this point.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go for that because Lord knows if that's ever actually going to happen.
But there's there's lots of receivers.
Yes.
I know you don't want to hear that, but you can get like an X4300, the same thing I have, if you can still find it for like, I don't know, would they go for $500-$700 something?
Well,
like that?
right now over at Accessories for Less, they're back up to $900.
Oh wow!
But
all the way up to $900. I bet that's a heck of a lot cheaper than that Yamaha.
But
you can use it as a pre. You can use it as a pre. You do not have to use the amps in there, though.
Yeah, there's the Marantz SR 6011, which would be the sister model to the X4300 from Denon. That's at $750 from Accessories for Less right now. So that's pretty darn affordable.
Yeah, and then the amplifiers. I mean, literally, they're clips. You could power them with almost anything. So there's whatever's the cheapest one is the one I would go with. There's you seem to be pairing the amp with the processor as if that somehow makes a difference. Believe me, the signal is, by the time when it leaves the amplifier, with the preamplifier, the processor, it's coming out analog. The amplifier doesn't care what model brand turned the digital signal into an analog signal.
Yeah, the brands need not match. That's by no means a requirement.
So there's, so the XPA 11 Gen 3 amp is great. You got the Monolith series if you really want to have a lot of power that you don't need. There's ATI that's out there, right? I'm sure that Outlaw still makes amps, right?
Outlaw's still out there, yeah. There's other less expensive. You don't need this. I mean, I would strongly recommend you get an AV receiver. Yes. I would use 6 of the AV receiver's amplifiers to power your 4 overhead and your surround back speakers.
Sure.
And I would go ahead and pick up a 5-channel external amp. Because, I mean, honestly, that isn't even necessary.
No.
But given what Greg wants, I'm like, you get a 5-channel external amp, powers your left, center, right, and your 2 surround speakers. You let the other 6 speakers be powered by the AV receiver. That's the value choice, in my opinion. And I mean, Emotiva's less expensive 5-channel amps would be a great choice here.
Get a 3-channel amp, but just do the front 3.
3-channel amp would also be great.
I mean, there's literally no reason to have all this, but that's what I would recommend. I would recommend getting the SR 6011 or whatever's the cheaper model that can do 7.2.4.
I mean, you could go all the way up to Denon's X6300 or X6400 for far less than this. That actually has 11 amplifiers built into that one receiver. You could stop there because you got clipped speakers, or you could still add a 3-channel or a 5-channel or a 7-channel if you want to. You can add whatever external amplification you want on top of that. If you're just like, I want a flagship product, because I understand that mentality. If you're just like, I want a flagship product, go ahead. I mean, you could go for a Marantz SR8012 with 11 amps built in, and that thing is a beast. So, I mean, if it's just that you want a flagship product, I'd get a flagship receiver. That's what I would do.
I agree with that as well. And the one thing that's stumbling me is that he wants to buy a new pre-pro amplifier. Does that mean that he already has one and he wants to get a new one, or does that mean he's looking to get into it?
Well, he's definitely getting new amps though as well, so that's a whole new system.
I understand, but if he's currently has amps, do not buy more. This would be my suggestion. But you do as you wish, man.
I mean, as long as you have 2, if you already own 2, that's actually all you need.
Yes.
Because if you went with an SR 6011 or an SR 6012,
you need 2.
Then you need 2 channels of external amplification to do 7.2.4 with those models. But that would be it. That is all that was required.
That's what I've got, and that's all they're doing is powering my top middles.
Top middles.
They made me do it. It's the only ones they would let me do.
So, Greg, we're suggesting you spend less money.
Yes,
that's our suggestion.
Biv on Facebook. Biv asks, if you use AirPlay to send Tidal from an iPhone to an AV receiver, is it still lossless?
Yep.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And I actually had to think about this, and I would have answered this question incorrectly. Rob got to it first. But the thing is that it's, everything that gets sent to via AirPlay gets changed into 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz or whatever it is, right?
That's right.
So if you send something that's a higher bit rate, it's going to come down. If you send something that's a lower bit rate, it's going to get transposed up. That's what's going to happen. Okay. But Tidal is already 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz.
That's right.
So therefore, it doesn't have to be changed at all. It's giving it what it wants, and it's fine. in this particular case, it happens to work out. But if somebody says, hey, I've got this other, these things I want to stream to AirPlay, and they're 96 kilohertz or whatever it is, 24-bit. You go, will I lose anything? Well, I'm going to say no, but the reality is it's going to be transposed to 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz.
And AirPlay does compress everything into Apple lossless compression. But right there in the name, that tells you it's Apple lossless compression. Right. So it's data compressed, but it isn't lossy compression.
Yeah.
So what goes in is exactly the same as what comes out on the other end. So Tidal is exactly CD quality. That's what they're sending. It's easy to get confused because you got the terms lossless, you got the terms high res, and sometimes people kind of mistakenly use those interchangeably. No, lossless just means it isn't a compression format where what goes in is not the same as what comes back out.
Right. Yeah. David found a distributor, not a retailer or an installer, but the distributor who would supply those guys, who's willing to sell David some RBH in-ceiling speakers. So, don't tell anyone that David is an installer, because maybe David sort of suggested that he might be. He was quoted a price of $60 a pair for RBH A600 and $30 a pair for the matching backer boxes. The Outdoor Speaker Depot in-ceiling speakers that we always mention are between $80 and $100 a pair. So are the Outdoor Speaker Depot models actually better and worth more money? Dude, no, you got like the dealer price.
Yes, you did.
You got the dealer
price.
You got a wholesale. Are you kidding me? It's like, hey, I found this car. I found this Lexus that the guy's going to sell it to me at a wholesale price. It's $5,000. But there's this Camry over here that's $10,000 on this different lot, a full retail price. Which does that mean the Camry's better? Like, no, dude. You just got a huge deal. That doesn't make it. What you're seeing, I hate to say it, pulling back the curtain a little bit, is how much markup are on these speakers.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
I think the retail price on the A600 is like the full MSRP. I think is $180 a pair, and you can usually find them for $160. And I've seen them around for like $120 a pair. So would it make you feel any better if the price tag on them said $120, and then you could go, oh, these are more expensive than the Outdoor Speaker Depot ones. Maybe they're a little bit better. Because that would be the actual comparison. The Outdoor Speaker Depot, they're giving you a pretty good price because there's essentially no middleman. Yeah. But it's still not wholesale price.
No.
Yeah. You're seeing the wholesale price in the RBH. You can get the RBH. Get the RBH. They're
Jump
great.
on that.
Yes.
He actually consider getting 8-inch in-ceiling speakers instead. So what are these, 6-inch?
Those are 6.5.
6.5. I mean, you can. I don't know.
I guess there's no reason to.
I guess.
Really, not any reason to.
None. These are Atmos speakers, right?
Yeah.
So I think 6.5 is fine, dude.
I'd pretty much always get the 6.5ers. Yeah.
Don't push your luck with this deal you got going on. Just say thank you, sir, and write your check. He has an alcove with a built-in bench to the left of his front left speaker. He put one of his 8 absorption panels in there, laying on top of the bench, and then stack some leftover rock wool insulation in the cubby holes under the bench. Do we think the alcove needs more treatment? I think you need to put something so that I'm not looking at raw insulation. But,
well, that could just be some fabric hanging.
That's what I'm saying.
It could literally just be hanging down. Yeah,
that's right. You would have to do very little other than just hang some fabric off the thing. I mean, you could put another panel above the panel you currently have there. Do you need it? I don't know. What else is in your room?
He was mostly thinking about. So if you think about this alcove, it's got a wall that would, like, if you're standing on that wall, you'd be facing the actual front wall. So if you're looking at the YouTube video, you can see the images. So he's got kind of a bare surface there where it's certainly not within the direct path of the speaker.
Right.
But if sound is like going off to the left of the front left speaker, he's like wondering, is that kind of bouncing off of that, forward-facing surface? It wouldn't hurt to put a panel there. It looks
like there's a light switch there, though, right?
It looks like there's a light switch there. I mean, it wouldn't hurt anything to put a panel there.
Yeah, you fill the whole thing up with insulation.
You could.
I mean, if you really wanted to, just put some fabric. Just put some fabric over it. Just the whole thing, floor to ceiling, one big base trap. For like, what's behind that curtain? Don't open that curtain.
I do want to say that's a very large screen. It looks like that thing's almost to the floor.
It is. Well, I mean, it's to the molding. Yeah. I mean, that is about as low as you can get.
That is a wall-sized screen he's got going on there. We're only seeing a hint of it, but that's a big screen.
It's got some shag carpet, though, man. Look at that. It looks plush. I want to walk on that one in bare feet, you know, when it's not 40 degrees outside. He wants to build a riser for a second row. Do we have a good resource with step-by-step instructions on and advice on how to build a riser? I know that Gene posted how he built his riser on Audioholics.
He did, and I would do it with a modification. Because everything other than what he put on the very bottom, I more or less agree with.
Yeah, I hated his riser.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked about it a number of times on this podcast, and it's not that I hate the dude or I hate the theater, but the riser, he specifically built it to add, to reverberate a little bit so that
it can move.
It would move, and it would add tactile sensation to anybody sitting on it.
Yeah.
And I loathed that. I found it very distracting during the movies. He loved it. And you know what? It ain't my riser. It's his riser. What are you doing, girl? It's his riser. So if he wants it, then that's great. And if that's what you want, then you should do what he did. Yeah. But if you want something a little bit more inert, you should do what Rob's about to tell you to do.
Which is essentially the exact same thing, minus the rubber that's holding all of the vertical joists under the riser that Gene built. Because that's the only real big modification I make. Now, of course, depending on what height you want, and there's actually, if you come to avrant.com and look in our show notes, we'll have links to this Audioholics article that Gene wrote, and to a place at DIY Movie Rooms that helps you to calculate the height that you need based on how far apart your two rows of seats are, how low your screen is to the ground. And in your case, it's very low, so you might actually need a taller riser so that people in the back row are able to see the bottom of your screen, which is very close to the ground. So that calculator could help. So of course you'll have to modify.
He needs like IMAX stadium seating.
Kind of.
You know what I mean? I mean, you're going to need like a three-stepper to get up the top of that thing.
The people in the back row have a very slightly obstructed view from the heads of the people in front of it. That's really not the end of the world. Yeah. But yeah, so the height you'll need to figure out. That will have to be modified from Gene's plans. But instead of putting, in Gene's case, he used the Oralex U-boats, which are essentially like rubber feet that you can put under the joist. Instead of doing that, I'm not sure what kind of subfloor he's got going on in this room. I don't know if this is laminate directly over concrete, which is sometimes done. I don't know if this is a wood subfloor. I want you to have a wood subfloor. So if that means removing the laminate where the riser is going to be, putting down that dimpled plastic, if this is a concrete foundation, put out the roll down dimpled plastic and secure your plywood or OSB directly on top of that. It's really not a difficult project, but I want you to have a wood subfloor. If you already have one, great. Just remove the laminate, expose your wood subfloor. Then attach the joists to the wood subfloor. That's the modification I would make. And once they're secured to that wood subfloor, line the bays that are created with some plastic and fill those bays about halfway up with sand. I want an inert platform, the polar opposite of what Gene built, but everything about what Gene built works. You're just, instead of it floating, you're going to secure it to the floor and deaden it with sand. That's all.
I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. I'll be honest with you. I am really glad I don't have to deal with that. I am. Jason's parents have a fairly large record collection. He's interested in borrowing some of them and listening to them on his surround sound system. His parents just use a pair of tower speakers, but Jason's setup uses M&K speakers plus dual subwoofers. He's concerned that if he uses the bass management of his surround sound receiver, that will mean his record player's output is being digitized, and he's worried that this will compromise the signal. But he can't run his M&K front and left and right speakers full range because they definitely do not play much below 80 hertz. Is there an all-analog crossover that he could use, and how could he incorporate it into a system so that his Atmos setup stays as is, his vinyl remains all analog, and he'd be able to use his dual subwoofers for both? I disagree that that digitizing it will compromise the signal.
Yes.
The signal is more being compromised by how it's going as it's going around on that needle. That's more compromising than any digitization that's going on. I would recommend, before you do any of the stuff that we can suggest to keep you all analog, I would recommend you listen to it. Just plug the record player in and just listen to it. And if you have an Atmos receiver or pre-pro, I don't know of one that doesn't have a phono input. Right. So you can plug your record player directly into your existing Atmos receiver or pre-pro,
and give it a try. See how good it sounds playing with just what you've already got. Your M&K front, left, right speakers, your dual subwoofers in stereo mode.
Right.
Yeah, by all means give that a try before we go spending any money on all analog stuff. I think that's in the head. I understand the concept and the thinking.
And there's maybe a lot of there's maybe information coming from his parents as well. You know, hey, we run it this way because it keeps it all analog, keeps it all pure. You know, none of this digitalization, which causes it to sound bright or harsh or something. Now, first of all, it's gonna sound different than your parent system.
Yeah,
no matter
speakers,
what,
different room. Yeah,
it's gonna sound different. There's gonna be it. I don't know what speakers your parents are running, but chances are they don't play as low as your subs do. There may not be that much low bass on whatever you're listening to. I don't know. But it's gonna sound different. You gotta expect that to begin with. But we're not looking for how different it sounds than your parents. We're looking for, do you think that this digitization is making a difference? And I will say unequivocally that I believe that you couldn't pick out if you could A/B all analog versus going through this receiver. If you could A/B it in a way that was actually valid, I don't see any world in which you would be able to pick one out over the other that would sound exactly the same to you.
On top of that, a lot of subwoofers, they're DSP controlled, which means they're going to digitize the bass regardless. Now, I mean, if it's a rhythmic subwoofer, it's going to stay analog the whole way. But if it's an SVS subwoofer, if it's a JL audio subwoofer, something like that, those are going to digitize it because they're DSP driven. So, I really think the concern over digitizing the signal is not something that needs to be worried about. But that said, let's go ahead and answer the question directly. If it's gotta stay analog, can it be done?
The only thing I've ever played with that was all analog all the way through was some Emotiva It was a 2-channel processor though. It was just two channels, and it had that analog crossover on it, and it was the only one I've ever seen. Now there is no way I can think of that you can keep your Atmos receiver and this thing all plugged in at the same time.
Because it has a home theater bypass.
Does it? Okay, now that I didn't know. I don't remember that. So what's the name of the product? I don't remember it.
So it's the XSP1, not to be confused with the XPS1, because how could anyone possibly confuse those two things? No, this is the XSP1. It's $1,200. And
Seems
it's
expensive.
Just a stereo preamp, but it's all analog. So the way this would work to keep your Atmos system as is, you will have to have your front, left, right speakers powered by an external amplifier. If if what you have is an AV receiver, you will need a 2-channel amplifier to make this work. But what you would do is you would connect the XSP1's stereo left-right outputs to your external amplifier. That external amplifier will connect to your front, left, right speakers. And then it does have a home theater bypass input. So you would take the front, left, right pre-outs from your Atmos receiver and feed them into this Emotiva's home theater bypass. So the Emotiva will need to be powered on whenever you power on your Atmos system. But all it's doing is passing the front, left, right signal through. So it hasn't touched that. So essentially, you haven't changed anything to your Atmos setup except you now have a stereo amplifier, external amplifier for your front, left, right speakers, and this Emotiva passing it through. Then your record player would be plugged directly into this Emotiva, and that is keeping it all analog. It's then feeding your external 2-channel amp, which feeds your front, left, and right speakers. Now you will then need to connect the subwoofer outputs of the Emotiva to your subwoofers. So the subwoofers have 2 inputs, right? They have a left and a right. So you will feed one of those inputs from your surround sound receiver, and you will feed the other input from the Emotiva. Don't use them both at the same time, but that's what that home theater bypass is for, so that it doesn't do anything. It's not feeding a signal to the subwoofer at the same time as your surround sound receivers. So, this can be incorporated in your system. It's $1,200 to do it, so give it a try with just your surround sound receiver first. It's a lot of money to keep it all analog.
Yeah. Well, that's the only product I've ever even heard of that operates in this way. And I remember when I took a look at it way back when for Audioholics, I saw the use of it. You know, there are people like our friend here who really want this and are interested in it, and I think that having a product for them is important. I don't think it's a product that's necessary, but then again, I'm obviously not the audience for it. So give it a try, just straight through the receiver. Buy this thing, I guess, and try it with this, and let us know if you think that it's worth $1,200 for the to keep it all analog-ish. Just remember, because the subwoofer is going to digitize it anyways.
Well, maybe not. It depends on which subs he has.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Andy. Andy says Netflix released the movie Bright, starring Will Smith, just a few days before Christmas. I know. You could not turn on Netflix and not know this. Definitely. It had a Hollywood blockbuster-sized budget, and its producers said they were swayed to release it exclusively via Netflix rather than having a theatrical run. By the way, Netflix could offer a truly global, simultaneous release along with targeted marketing to its subscribers. And marketing they did. They also went full out on audio, the AV quality using both Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, although you'll need a 2017 LG OLED in order to enjoy both technologies at the moment. So what do we think? Is this the future of blockbuster movie releases? Will movie theaters become a thing of the past? We've been predicting, not we, but the prediction of the demise of the movie theater has been going on since forever.
It sure has.
And I don't see movie theaters going away. I do see movie theaters having, in the very near future, having to come up with new revenue streams. That may involve VR, may involve, virtual reality, may involve, I'm not sure what else. But I do see that happening. I don't see them going away. I was at Christmas Day, 4 p.m. showing of Star Wars, and it wasn't jam-packed, but it wasn't empty either. And I mean, I don't know if that's a great day to judge that sort of thing, but these were people who were there just to see the Star Wars movie for sure. I'm used to going to a Star Wars movie, and when they show a Marvel, trailer for Infinity War, somebody, at the end of it, somebody starts cheering. At least one person, and no one did it. I was like, yeah, what? No, we're not cheering? We're not cheering. Okay. All right. Well, that's a thing. I guess that's happening. I was kind of disappointed by that. But, I don't see them going away. Now, do I buy this whole, we wanted to do with Netflix because of this, that, and that? No, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. That, to me, screams of marketing speak of, this is the only people that would take this movie. And now, because by many accounts, it's kind of a stinker. Right? It's not supposed to be that good. I haven't watched it yet because the reviews have been so, piss poor. I honestly, I was sort of on the fence about it. I kind of I was like, it looks a little heavy-handed with the whole orcs or an analog for oppressed minorities in this country. And, as important as that topic is, I don't necessarily need to see a movie that's berating me about that. But really closed the deal on me not being excited enough to watch this thing was when I found out that the MacGuffin was a magic wand. I was like,
which they just call a magic wand.
I know.
They don't give it a clever name or anything.
I was like, she's like, it's a magic wand. I'm like, it's a magic wand? Is that what we're all supposed to care about here? Like grants wishes? I'm like, you couldn't have called it a wish stick? Anything other than magic wand. So I was like, magic wand, I'm out. I checked out that magic wand. So I will watch it eventually. Right now, I've got other things to watch. I've got, what am I working on at this moment? I'm working through Stranger Things 2, the second season. With my son. I've been watching a lot of that. When we were sick, we were both sick. We were watching we did marathons of Stranger Things. I still haven't finished The Punisher. The Magicians just came out with the season 2 I'd like to see. The Arrowverse and I have parted ways. I just can't keep up.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of shows.
Too many shows, and they cross over, and I'm confused, and I don't want to. And then Heroes of Tomorrow, Legends of Tomorrow was kind of garbage, and I don't want to have to watch that in order to keep up with everything else. So, and then I just watched Legion on Hulu, which I thought was great. I really liked Legion. I don't know if you've seen that, but that was great.
That's was that the FX version of Legion, the X-Men spinoff?
Yeah,
Legion.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yes.
Legion. Yeah, the X-Men one.
Yes.
So
yeah, that was great. Yeah.
I thought it was really, the first episode in particular is just like, so good. And then you could tell they're like, we are totally out of money.
We're out of money. Yes, there was some budget constraints.
Let's use, remember that really great scene we had in the first one? Let's flash back to that a whole bunch.
Same as The Gifted. That's a lot of hanging out in that house through the middle of the season.
Yeah, I haven't gotten too far on that. I got The Runaways I gave up on, and there's just other things. So I am going to watch it. Do I think this is the future of blockbusters? Not yet. Not yet. I don't think we're there yet.
You remember when DVD blew up? Like, there was a time when it was a real legitimate thought that DVD was going to replace the movie theater. Because, we look at it now and it's like, physical media in general is just completely on a downtrend. But there was a time when DVD sales eclipsed what was made at the box office. It was more than 50% of the revenue, and it was really a genuine thought that this is the end of the movie theater. It's all just going to be shiny discs. And some movies were released straight to DVD, and they just disappeared.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, like there were movies that did poorly in the theaters, and then when they were released on DVD, they sold like hotcakes, because people remembered they were in the theater and thought, oh, yeah, I'll just wait for it to come out on DVD. But something about never being in a theater, still, whatever that psychological barrier is, will that ever go away? I'm not sure. But Netflix, I don't think is any more, it's more popular right now than DVDs, but I don't think it's more popular than DVDs were at the height of DVD. That was a total paradigm shift when that happened. So if that didn't kill theaters, I don't think Netflix will.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, I do see that there can be in the future, something that takes the place of that large screen. But it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy too. When you're releasing a movie, there's a huge marketing push that happens up until the day that thing is released, right? Now afterwards you might not see much about it unless it's doing really well and they're like, okay, let's throw some more money at it because everybody's watching this thing and everybody's loving it, and let's see if we can get some of these people who are waiting for it to come out in DVD or Blu-ray or Ultra HD Blu-ray, whatever it is these days, to get them into the theaters too. Because it works. That works. I mean, if I hear about a movie that's coming out that I'm interested in, I'm like, yeah, I'll wait till it hits Netflix. And then it comes out and everybody's like, this is the most amazing movie I've ever seen. And I hear everybody saying that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go see it. I'll go see it. I'll go see it. I mean, I really want Thor Ragnarok. I really wanted to see that in the theater and didn't quite get to it. Yeah, didn't quite get to it. The Star Wars thing is just a holiday stuff for us. The Santa always gives us tickets to go see the new Star Wars movie, which has been great. I mean, the kids love it. It gets us all out. It's great, but it's expensive, man. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was like it was an $11 ticket by the end of the tax and the convenience fee for ordering it online. It was $15 a ticket. I'm like, you guys have lost your mind. A convenience fee? This is me being convenienced by doing it. Was so stupid. Anyway, all right, okay. Let's go on. Because we can talk about that. That's something for a different podcast. We talk about that everywhere. Bari. Bari here. I guess we might have some images up on Facebook.
Isn't it just Barry? I think it's
Barry. Bari?
Just spelled differently. I don't know. We apologize for mispronouncing your name either way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I know, I'm terrible. Barry thanked us for discussing his basement setup where he had an awkward soffit in the middle of a ceiling that's covering a pipe. He sent some more photos so that we could get a look at the left side of the room and the L-shaped portion of his basement where his kids currently keep their toys. That was one of my suggestions last time, was that maybe that other corner might be better than this corner because this corner stinks.
Yeah, so it's L-shaped. Over to the left was kids' toys, but he sent a photo of what's going on over there.
Yeah, that section is kind of narrow. It has a soffit for the support beam lowering the height of the ceiling along one side and has a window and a door that he doesn't want obstructed, so he's not a fan of putting his home theater over there if he can avoid it. Dude, you are straight up right. Do not put your theater over there. There is way too much going on there. There's a French doors at the end there. It's just
looks like,
very confused by this whole setup. But yes, and these soffits are killing me. All right, so one of our suggestions was to mount something like SVS prime elevation speakers up high on his side walls to act as his top middle speakers. That might actually be possible, as he does have space just in front of the soffit that covers the support beam. On his right side, there's open wall space. On his left side, there's space above the door. However, his left surround speaker is already in a compromised location. So what if he made the position above the door and higher up on the right wall into his surround position using something like a focal bird speaker? Would it be better to do that while putting his top middle speakers in the bottom of the support beam soffit, or would it be better to leave his surround speakers where they are and put the top middle speakers in those elevated side wall? If you are confused, it's because I have no idea what I'm reading here. I am very confused by what I'm reading here.
Let's just focus on his surround left speaker.
Is that the one that's next to the couch here that I'm looking at? Is that the one? No.
So surround right is next to his couch.
And where's the surround left? Is it by that tree?
So surround left is, if you're looking at the image where you can see the door, that's a closet door.
Yeah, yeah.
And in front of that closet door, there's like a low little bookcase. And we're kind of looking at a vacuum cleaner in the image. Well, right behind the handle of that vacuum cleaner, that's his front left speaker. So it's like recessed.
His left surround, you mean?
His left surround, yeah. So
it's actually sort of in front of where he's actually sitting.
It's in front of where his seats are. It's kind of partially blocked by the jet out for the closet. It definitely is a compromised position for that surround left speaker. That's not exactly where I put it, but he's saying to get it beside his primary seat, you'd have to basically put it above that closet door. So we had suggested that if he didn't want to put Atmos speakers, directly under the support beam soffit or behind the soffit or in front of the soffit or whatever, that he could potentially put top middle speakers on his side walls up high. But he's like, maybe I'll put my surround left-right speakers on the side walls up high, and then I'd have to put top middles or top rears somewhere else.
I feel like she's going to fall off here. Are you falling off? Just settle down. Daisy. She's actually a lot more active than I thought she'd be. She's trying to like curl up on my neck, get a little bit warmer, I think. Okay, I do agree with moving this around left speaker. I agree with putting it up high is problematic. Let me look at this picture. Let me look at this picture one more time.
Yeah.
I have to scroll down. I have to scroll. There's some scrolling involved.
Okay. I mean, the only other option would be, I guess you could try and squish it into the slight bit of framing that's next to the closet door.
Well, that's actually what I was thinking. Why can't, if he got like a focal bird, if he's already thinking of focal birds, he could actually mount that to that side, that wall right next to the door, if you're facing the door to the left of it. Okay. He could actually mount it around the corner and then aim it.
That's true. Yeah, he could mount it in the kids' room and then just pivot it on its mount so that it's facing.
I don't want it high, dude. Barry, I don't want it high. High is bad. High means that that anything that we try to do with top middles is going to be severely compromised. So how about you mounting this to the wall, either right there at that little where the thing is, or a little bit around the corner, so that it's still at ear level. I mean, heck, you could just put a shelf there and put your current speaker on it. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't do that.
Actually, there's already kind of a little shelf in the kids' room, so it would need to be bigger to hold a speaker, but it's already kind of there where we're suggesting.
I can't. The scrolling is just too much. It's too much scrolling. So I see what looks like railing, so I can't see that. But yes, that's where I suggest you put your left speaker. And then
you can match it on the right side because that wall is more or less open.
Yes, you can match the placement on the right side, and then you could use the higher placement with the prime elevation speakers or more focal birds. Who cares?
That's right.
And put those up there, up high.
I like that solution.
So the soffit covering the pipe is bothering him. Yeah, bothered me too, dude. And yes, his kids have been shooting Nerf bullets into the hole in that soffit. So I was like, is that a
you
Nerf
asked
bullet?
about that, like, that Nerf bullet and a Nerf disc? Yes, it is, because there's a hole in that soffit.
He measured and the pipe is only hanging about 4 inches below the ceiling joist, but the soffit was built to match the height of the support beam soffit, just as Rob suspected. So here we go. So could he tear down the pipe soffit? He has an idea in mind to make an acoustic cloud ceiling out of the absorptive material. It could cover most of the theater's ceiling, conceal the pipe, and give him somewhere to install his Atmos overhead speakers. What do we think of that plan? I don't know anything about code. Okay,
Yeah,
so I don't know if
I
don't know if there's a reason why you can or cannot do what you are suggesting. So you must talk to a contractor who knows what they're talking about, because I don't know. It sounds great to me. That sounds like a fantastic idea. Like, I would love you just to tear that whole thing down and then put a drop ceiling and have, you know what I mean? It just drop ceiling just low enough so that it's below the pipe, and then everything's covered and you could do whatever you want.
Yeah,
I
was
love
definitely thinking drop ceiling in here, because
but I don't know if you can. You know, I don't know if you can just have that pipe up there and not have it in something. You know, I mean, there may be a reason why it's in something.
I mean, there's lots of basements with drop tile ceilings and all of the HVAC and piping and everything. You know, if you remove the ceiling tiles, you can get to them. That's kind of the point of the drop tile ceiling.
I'm just saying, ask somebody, dude. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, make sure you're within code. I'm very hesitant on the idea of it just being insulation, basically. Like, no surface of any kind, not a drop tile, not drywall or anything, just insulation. That really gives me pause.
I like the idea of just doing a really shallow 4-inch, 5-inch drop ceiling.
Yeah.
Covers the pipe, and then gives you all the access that you need, and then you can start running wires through it and everything. Man, that'd be pretty sweet.
You could put extra lighting in there if you wanted to. Yeah, you can do a heck of a lot with a drop tile ceiling. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah. Travis, we're chugging along, dude. We're on number 11.
Doing pretty good. We need to, because we got a 2-week backlog going on.
Yeah. Travis says, after our explanation, Travis now understands the LFE channel and why he didn't get the 10 dB boost he was expecting from his new PB12 NSD and his 2.1 setup. I have no idea what he's talking about, but okay.
That was last episode.
Whatever, dude. That was 2 weeks ago. He still wanted louder bass, though, so he ran some bass sweeps and goosed the sub a bit. Now he has louder bass, except at 35 and 50 hertz, where there seems to be nulls, or at least severe dips. Is this something that room correction can help with? No.
Not if it's a cancellation, which it certainly sounds like, and
that's
would
what
be
it sounds like it is.
Entirely, not shocking at all to have cancellations like that. No, because just picture this: whatever's going on right now, the sound waves are bouncing back and forth through the dimensions of your room, and in where you're seated right now, you happen to get places where at 35 hertz and 50 hertz, the sound waves are canceling. So if you made them louder, they're still canceling. That hasn't fixed the problem at your seat. Elsewhere in the room, it might be obscenely loud, but at your seat, they're still canceling. So unfortunately, EQ can't solve this.
Yeah. Move your sub, but even
move
then,
move your seat.
Move your seat. Those are what you play with the phase knob a little bit, but the reality here is that this is almost certainly a function of the size, the shape of your room.
And where you happen to be sitting within it. Yeah,
in relation to the sub. So changing the location of the sub is about what you can do, or change the location of your seats. Phase knob is something you can also play with there.
With a single sub, it's unlikely to change a cancellation. That's a function of the dimensions of your room, where the sub is, where your seat is, all in relation to each other. You can. You're a candidate for a subwoofer crawl.
Yes, you are.
What you would do is put the subwoofer, this is temporary, of course, you put the subwoofer where you sit, you play a bass sweep on repeat, and you then go to all the locations in your room where the sub could potentially live, and you're not necessarily listening for what you think is the best bass or the strongest bass or anything like that. You're trying to find a spot where there's no gigantic dips. Yeah. Even if there's some humps, that you can fix with EQ.
Yes.
You can knock down humps, but you can't fill in dips. So if you can find a spot in your room via the subwoofer crawl where you don't have any big dips, or maybe you just have one instead of two, right? That would still be an improvement. That's what you're looking for.
Right. So we also tried running sweeps with both with and without the sub on it. It seems that the bass management isn't doing anything in 2-channel stereo mode or any of the stereo listening modes. He set his Golden Ear Aeon 3 speakers to small in the crossover to 80 hertz and run a sweep, and he didn't seem to hear any roll-off. He moved the crossover to 120 and still didn't notice any. He's done the same test with both his Pioneer VSX 45TX and Onkyo TX SR 701. The results are the same. Is he doing something wrong, or is this a limitation of his receivers, or is bass management in stereo mode just not a thing? I am a little confused by what he's saying here. So he turned his subs off and then ran
I want to
sweeps?
do the super pedantic answer first, just to be safe.
Yeah.
Which is, did you turn the subs off in the receiver's settings, or did you just leave the receiver as is and go to the back of the subwoofer and turn the subwoofer off? Because if you turn the subwoofer off in the receiver's settings, that's going to set your front left rights to large automatically.
Right.
And that would mean you no longer have bass management going on there. Now, that very well might not be the case, but I want to give that just in case that's what happened, because it wasn't super clear when he said he turned his subwoofers off, whether he did so inside his AV receiver settings. So, yeah. But let's assume that he just went to the back of his subwoofer physically and turned it off, and the speakers were still set to small with an 80 or 120 hertz crossover.
Right. So that's what he's trying to hear here is the speakers rolling off as they get to the crossover point.
Even if they were set to large, you ought to hear a roll off at some point, because those are A-on-3s, those are bookshelf speakers. They don't play down to 20 hertz.
Yeah. Yeah, so why isn't he hearing anything?
Yeah.
I mean, he should hear something. He should. So clearly you've done something wrong, I think. I mean, I don't know what you've done wrong, and it could be that there are some stereo modes, and if it would just been one receiver, this would have been a lot easier. But since he's done it with 3 different receivers, I can't believe that all 3 of them, no, 2. Is it just 2?
Yeah, just 2 receivers. Okay, that he mentioned anyway. A Pioneer and an Onkyo.
So if some of the stereo modes are like stereo bypass, meaning it bypasses all bass management. So make sure you're not using one of those modes.
Yeah, and the Denon and Marantzas do offer a separate stereo-only setup mode, which can be different from your surround sound settings.
And if you haven't changed that, then it may be that they are running it in full range in stereo mode.
That's right.
So you need to check that as well. Something's not right. I'm not sure what it is, but you should have heard something, and I don't know why.
80 hertz is a lot lower than a lot of people think it is.
It is very low.
It's like 80 hertz is really low.
It's really quite low.
That's bassy bass. Like what most people think of as bass is about 250 hertz.
Right. You need to be like turning the crossover all the way up as high as it can go, and then trying this before 80 hertz. You know,
I mean, the speakers themselves might have just rolled off at that point already, so you didn't hear a difference from the receiver's crossover being applied, because that's where the speakers roll off naturally anyway. Yeah,
the 120, I would have guessed that you should have heard something at 120.
A little bit of something, yeah.
But you go all the way up as high as it'll go, 240 or whatever it is. Try to go all the way up.
If you play a sweep that goes all the way down to 20 hertz, there's no way those Golden Ear A-on-3s are playing down to 20 hertz. They're just not. I mean, play the same sweep through your subwoofer, and you're going to be like, oh, there's a heck of a lot more bass going on. It extends a lot further than I thought this bass sweep did. Yeah. I think that's mostly what's going on here, but definitely all the other things that we mentioned, double check those, because this could be a settings error.
Right. Jonathan asks, how important is sound really? In the 2013 study, which Floyd Tools referenced in his book Sound Reproduction, both novices and experts were shown recordings of music competitions and asked to identify the winners. Both groups largely got it right when they viewed only video, no audio at all. But if they watched the videos with the audio, or heard only the audio, no video, they got it wrong, with the experts doing even worse than the novices. This is why I love audio. This is why I love audio, because let me tell you something about audio. I say this all the time, people get mad. These people who do the reviews, they are just the same as you. They're no different than you. They can hear no better or worse than you.
And sometimes that whole I'm an expert expectation bias totally leads them down a different
totally. And knowing how much something costs, or being excited because you've never heard a beryllium tweeter before, or this is a new design of speaker or whatever, and that somebody who just goes in there just going, I don't know, a speaker is a speaker, it's a box, right?
Or it's like like those taste tests where instead of just identifying which one they like better, they try to identify the restaurant that it came from, which is like a totally different mindset. And that happens in listening tests too. It's like, instead of just trying to say which one sounds better, they're like, oh, I can identify which speaker this is or something, right?
Right. So, I mean, how important is sound? I mean, it sounds pretty important. It's awfully hard to hear music without sound. So, you know, but this is a great example to me of why we all have to be humble in this hobby. Why we all have to take everything that's said with a grain of salt and realize that everybody's opinion is valid. You cannot say definitively that a speaker is a bad speaker, because guess what? In the right room, which is probably the wrong room for audio, but in the right room, that speaker is going to be the best speaker no matter what. You know, it just is. It just is. Everything that's wrong with the speaker is corrected by everything that's wrong with the room. You know, and it just magically comes together in this perfect synergy of awfulness that just turns out something beautiful. It can happen. So be humble about all this and realize that, yeah, hey, when you ask our opinions and we have an opinion, you're like, how come you don't? And how many times have we been asked why we hate Polk so much? We don't hate Polk. We just like other things better. But if you like Polk, you are not a bad person.
No.
I am perfectly okay with everybody owning Polk speakers. If you're on the Polk forums every day talking about how great Polk is, more power to you. You're supposed to be getting enjoyment out of this. And if you are, and Polk brings you that enjoyment, have at it, buddy. It's just, that's not my bag, but it doesn't have to be. I'm not going to look down on you for it either. This is perfect. This is a perfect example of experts being too full of themselves when they're doing this stuff.
It's interesting though, because there's more going on here than even it just seems, because these were real performance competitions.
Yeah.
Where a winner had been selected, and this is testing, could novices and experts, when viewing a video recording of it, identify who won? Now, what were the conditions of the competition? I'm assuming the judges could also see the performers, that they weren't listening to the performers blind, which means, like, what Floyd Toole is using this study to point out, and what is, I think, very valid, is that visuals override our audio sense. When we have our eyes open and we can see something, we can convince ourselves completely that we heard something that we didn't. That we are very visual creatures, and we weight what we see subconsciously.
Much more highly, yeah.
Yeah, far more than what we hear. And even when you're aware of that, you can't stop yourself from doing it or compensate for it. It just doesn't matter. That's like, it's basically how we're wired. So that to me was interesting. It was almost as though what it was really showing was that the people who judged these competitions originally were probably way more swayed by what the people looked like when they were playing their instrument or singing versus how they actually sounded.
Right.
Therefore, when you remove the audio from it, I mean, it's interesting. Like, maybe if the people who had originally judged the competition had only heard them play and were blindfolded, they would have selected a different winner too. Yeah. That could very well be the case. And maybe it would have been the same.
It tells us a lot about the competition itself. More so than it does about the people outside of it.
Because maybe when you can't see the pretty face or see the person who's really into their guitar or really into their violin or whatever.
Or whatever it was. We don't know.
Yeah, whatever we don't know what the actual performance was, but whatever it was, when you can't see them performing, maybe someone else actually sounded better.
Yeah.
But both times when you could see them. Yeah.
Is why it's so important when you're doing comparisons to try to do it blind, if you can. Blind meaning you don't know which speaker is playing. You don't know. It would be even better if you didn't even know which speakers could be playing.
That's right.
You'd be completely blind. Like, listen to these two speakers, which one's is better?
I love the ones where they do a blind listening comparison, but there's actually only one speaker.
Yeah.
And people still swear up and down that they heard differences.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because of expectation bias.
That's right.
You were told that there was more than one speaker, therefore you heard more than one speaker.
Yep.
This is, why it's so hard to take some of these reviews that come out with any measure of credibility. To being able to look at these reviews and read them and go, this person is clearly impressed with how expensive these speakers are. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You know, this person is clearly impressed with, you know, these sorts of things. And as a reviewer, I always try to keep that out of it, but it's like Rob says, it's impossible. You can't keep it out of it. A lot of times, the way I would do it is I wouldn't know how much something costs. Like I just would forget. I would have no idea. And they would send me the speakers. I would do the review, and then I would look up the price after I'd written everything.
Yeah.
And that was my way of trying to keep the price out of it. But it didn't always work. And I always, in my mind, had a guess as to what I thought, how much I thought these things cost. Now, if I was way off in the wrong direction, I would let you know in my review. I'm like, you know, I spent the entire time thinking these were $500 speakers, and they're $2,000 speakers. For $500, they are awesome. For $2,000, not so much. So,
not the value of our mouse pads. But yeah, I mean, how important is sound? It goes the other way too, right? There's that thing we talked about where, you know, you see the person swing a punch, and when there's no sound, it misses by a mile. And then when you hear the smack effect at the same time, you'll swear up and down that guy got hit.
Yeah.
So it can go the other direction too.
Yeah. Earl has a 2015 Sony XBR 75X940C 4K TV that supports HDR10 but not Dolby Vision. What do we think the probability is for a Dolby Vision firmware update? The TV has the X1 chip, but it's his understanding that only TVs from 16 and 17 with the X1 Extreme chip will get the update. He reached out to Sony for support, but did not receive a definitive answer. And I think the answer is you are screwed, dude. I don't think you're getting one.
I mean, unless something changes.
Yeah.
It's
everything
the X1
we
Extreme
know so
chip.
far is that you're not getting it.
You're
so
not
could you get it in the future? Yes. Will you? I don't know. I don't have any idea.
Yeah, nothing has been announced. Sony has not said there's any plans to bring it to any TVs other than the ones with the X1 Extreme chip. So that is the Z9D. So that's the one from 2016, was their flagship from 2016, was the Z9D series, the X930E, the X940E, and the A1E OLED TV. Those are the ones that have been announced that will be getting a Dolby Vision firmware update. They say mid to late January. None of the other Sony TVs have been announced to be getting it.
All right. So he recently got an Apple TV 4K for his birthday, and he's noticed that the Apple TV 4K Netflix app has HDR content labeled as Dolby Vision. But those same programs say HDR in the Netflix app built into the Sony TV. He's read various comments online regarding the issue, but no one seems to know why this is happening. Is the TV converting the Dolby Vision signal to HDR10, or is something else going on? Is it possible that the Apple TV 4K is doing the mapping for the dynamic metadata? I think what's more likely happening is that the two apps are just programmed slightly differently, and that they're just showing HDR on the Sony built app, but Dolby Vision on the Netflix app within the Apple TV 4K. That would be my guess. Rob may be able to tell you for sure, but my guess would be that the Sony app just says HDR10 for HDR for everything, because Dolby Vision is HDR. It's just not what you're expecting to see.
So I'll try to make it clear by saying there's basically 4 components to this system. You've got what is the content. So on Netflix's own servers, how is the content stored? Then there's your player hardware. What is it capable of outputting? Then there's the software on that player hardware. What is that software capable of supporting? And then there's your television. What is your television capable of supporting? So Netflix's content, they have some content that is 1080p only. They have some content that is 4K only, no HDR of any kind, but 4K resolution. They have some content that's 4K in HDR10, and then they have some content that's 4K in Dolby Vision. Now, the content that's 4K in Dolby Vision has basically an HDR10 base layer and then Dolby Vision on top of that as a superset. So those are kind of the ways it could be stored on Netflix's own server. Now you come to what is the playback hardware. So that could either be your Apple TV 4K or your Sony Television's own built-in apps. Now the hardware of the Apple TV 4K can output a Dolby Vision signal. The hardware of your Sony TV cannot. It can only understand HDR10. Then we have what is the software on that playback hardware capable of doing? Well, the Apple TV 4K's Netflix app can support Dolby Vision. The Netflix app that's built into your Sony TV cannot. It can only understand HDR10. And lastly, we have your television. Your television cannot understand Dolby Vision. It can only understand HDR10. So when you're watching something where on Netflix's servers, the content itself is 4K Dolby Vision, the Apple TV says, I understand Dolby Vision. The Netflix app that I have running on me understands Dolby Vision. So when I show you this title and how it's stored in Netflix, it says Dolby Vision. It says 4K Dolby Vision. That's what's on Netflix's server. That signal gets connected to your Sony television. It goes, that Sony TV doesn't understand Dolby Vision. I'm going to send the HDR10 base layer because it does understand that.
Right.
You could connect it to a 4K television that doesn't support HDR at all of any kind. And then you will just get 4K resolution, no HDR. Or you could connect it to a 1080p TV, and it'll say, well, it doesn't understand 4K or HDR. I'm just sending 1080p. So what the Apple TV 4K is showing you is what can the Apple TV 4K support, what can the Netflix app on the Apple TV 4K support, and what is the content actually on Netflix's servers. In some cases, all of that is 4K Dolby Vision. But the last piece in the chain, the Sony TV, can't understand it, so you still get HDR10, because that's always there as a subset underneath Dolby Vision. All four parts of that chain have to support Dolby Vision for you to see Dolby Vision. If one part in that chain doesn't support Dolby Vision, you'll get HDR10.
Infinite Gary. So Gary was pleased to hear about DisplayWars.com website that Yannick mentioned to help visualize different screen size and shape comparisons. But that website does not include a figure to tell you your field of view given a certain seating distance. Is there an easy way to compare two screen sizes to know the distance at which you'd have to sit in order for them both to provide the same field of view? Rob?
There's the good old viewing distance calculator. That's still out there. Now, these actually go nicely hand in hand, because you can use the DisplayWars.com and it'll give you the table so that if you know the diagonal size, it shows you the table to give you the width and the height and all that. So that's an easy way to figure out what the width of your screen is, which you can then plug into the viewing distance calculator, because you need the width. You need the width of the screen to figure out your field of view. So these two working hand in hand work very nicely together. Yeah.
So Gary watched the bonus features for Dunkirk, and they talked about the care and effort that went into getting all the uniforms exactly right, getting all the boats and planes, and they showed several wide-angle photos of the actual production that really demonstrated what a massive undertaking it was to make the film. But the actual movie seems to have a teal-blue filter over it, and most of the shots are tight and claustrophobic. So we don't see any of the accurate uniform colors or get any sense of the full scope of the actual boats they used as shown in the production photos. So why? Why go through all of the effort behind the scenes and then, in Gary's opinion, basically ruin it with a blue filter and no wide shots? Is he just exaggerating? Do we think he has a point? I haven't seen the movie, so I can't comment on that. But there is a real value to having these period accurate costumes and things that has very little to do with the how the actual finished film looks, and that has to do with the sound that's going on in the background, like from the boats and the planes and stuff like that, how the actors react in their costumes, how they how much they feel as part of that character. I think there's a value there. Do we know for a fact that I mean, look at the as an analog here, or as a comparison, the Lord of the Rings. In the first three movies, the orcs, they had tribes, they had, specific things with their costumes that differentiated them. Do I understand any of that? No. Do I notice any of it? No. Do I care that I don't notice it? No, that I never notice it. No, I do not. But to the actors, to the production, to the final, it added something. I don't know what it added, but it added something, and it may have just added an Oscar nomination for the, the production designer, or the costumer or whatever. But there's some value there. But you're right; it does seem a little wasteful when you go through all this trouble and it doesn't end up on the film. I mean, hey, Prince Harry and what's his name were both stormtroopers in the recent movie, and their scene got cut. I mean, how do you cut the future king of England? I cut his whatever. But okay, go ahead. Whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, when I'm watching movies with my parents, we'll often watch the special features after we're done watching the movie, and very often they enjoy that more than the movie. They find that more interesting, seeing all the way it was shot, and that stuff is super interesting. It's almost like if you go through all the special features that come on discs, it's almost like a little mini film school that you could go through right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, Christopher Nolan's a talented director. If he wanted to have lots of sweeping wide shots, that's something he's capable of filming.
Sure.
It's not that. So this was a choice, right? He made a choice. He wanted these tight-in claustrophobic scenes. And it's true. Like when they're in the planes, it's like all you're seeing is their face. They went to the trouble of actually getting like the real planes. Like not even replicas or something, like the actual World War II planes. They went and got them, put IMAX cameras into them, and then really all you see is the face of the pilot. Like,
right.
You don't see anything else around it. So, I mean, it's tough to say. Obviously, these are artistic choices that Christopher Nolan meant. The filter thing, do you want
Let's put it this way.
Blue or green filter over everything?
He may have said at the very beginning of this production, we're going to make this as realistic as possible. Yep. We're getting the planes, we're getting the uniforms, we're doing all that. And then once he started filming it, his vision for it excluded a lot of that stuff. But had it included those things, they needed to be there for the film. And he couldn't have like CGI'd them in afterwards. No. It wouldn't have been the same. So I think that's also part of it. It's like, hey, we've got the money. I've got the clout to make this happen. Let's just have it all there, and then we will film it as we'll let that part be something we think about later. Because if we don't have these costumes, if we don't have the planes, if we don't have the boats, then we won't have them. But if we do have them and I decide not to use them, well, then that's okay. That's my choice.
Yeah, I can't say. I mean, we don't have the version of the movie where it was shot differently. Had a different filter on it, had more wide shots. We don't have that version of the film. Maybe it would have been better, but we don't know. So, I can't disagree with what Gary's saying. I can't completely agree with it either. These were choices that were made. That's really all it comes down to.
Yeah. So Gary has some black and white westerns that he'd like to watch. They're in 4:3, and the screen is 2.35 to 1. So they are in the aspect ratio of a regular old TV back when your parents owned
CRT
TVs.
tube.
Yeah. So his projector is natively 16:9, which he just zooms in so that it fills the width of the screen. So what should he do when watching these 4:3 movies? You are going to have some huge black bars. This is what you're going to do. You're going to go to one of your other TVs, watch it in there, because it's going to be massive black bars on the side
on the left and right. Yeah.
On the left and right of your screen.
Because otherwise, you're going to have a whole bunch of actual image that is being physically projected above and below the borders of your screen. If you were
theoretically, you could do a stretch mode so it stretches to 2.35 to 1, and then everybody's going to look very short and very, very wide.
Short and very fat. Or I guess you could stretch them to 16:9, where they'd look slightly short and fat, and you'd still have black bars on the left and right. If you were going to watch 4:3 content on a 2.35 to 1 screen, I mean, in my opinion, you have to see the whole image, so you have to zoom the projector out enough that the full height of the image fits within the height of your screen, which means big old black spaces on the left and right.
Yeah.
You got to. Otherwise, you're cropping off the top of it. It's going to be a much smaller image, though. But yeah, it's what you got to do.
Donald. A friend recently gave Donald a really nice Macintosh MC275 tube amp that had belonged to his father's friend. His friend's father. Sorry. He used his Oppo 105 as a preamp, and he knows what he was hearing was distortion and why we don't like tube amps, but it sounded really nice and so warm through his Mirage bookshelves. Okay. His theater setup is a Marantz 7010 plus a monolith amp for Atmos, PSP speakers, and a pair of SB2000s. He has a turntable, would like to use the Macintosh and Mirage speakers with it, but also use the SB2000 from the main system. Is there any way to do this? Oh, sorry. Okay.
There is a moving daisy.
The daisy is getting adjusted. I think I moved a little too much. Okay, wait a second. So he wants to add this amp
Yes.
to his system.
Yes.
But only wants to use it with the turntable.
Yeah, he only wants to use the tube amp with the turntable, but he would like to still be able to use his dual subwoofers. That's the tricky part.
He doesn't want to just put the tube amp in there all the time, because it's
no, because he doesn't want to have the tube amp powering his front, left, and right, because he wants to use separate speakers for it too. Right? He's got his PSB speakers for his Atmos setup. Then he wants to use his Mirage bookshelf speakers and his dual subwoofers and this tube amp to play with his turntable. But he wants to be able to still use those subs. That's the thing that's tripping him up a little bit.
So could he, I mean, I guess he could. What about that SVS thing that that Emotiva thing we just talked about, the $1,200 analog only thing? Could he use that?
Yeah, it's not necessary.
Okay.
It's way more than you need to, because you could send out a zone 2 signal just for the turntable, right? So turntable, right? Turntable still plugged into your Marantz.
Yeah.
It's a stereo signal, so that comes out as zone 2, no problem. But what's coming out of zone 2 is full range. So out of the zone 2 pre-outs, you connect a mini DSP 2x4.
Okay. Yeah,
Right?
that makes sense.
$100 device, so you got your mini DSP 2x4. That lets you set up your crossover. The mini DSP 2x4 feeds the tube amp.
Sure.
And that signal has now been high-pass filtered. That goes to your Mirage bookshelf speakers. Then you have low-pass filtered outputs that feed your subs. And similar to the other situation where we had subwoofers being connected to two separate things, it's still okay, because you still have your Marantz 7010's subwoofer outputs plugged into one of the inputs on each of your SVS SP2000s, and then the mini DSP's subwoofer outputs feed the other input on your SP2000s. So the SP2000s are getting fed a subwoofer signal from the mini DSP, which is being fed by zone 2. The mini DSP is creating your crossover, and it feeds your tube amp. That'll work.
Yeah, so he has to unplug his speakers, though.
Nope.
Why not?
Just has to turn off zone 2. Or turn off the main zone when he's listening to zone 2.
Yeah. So you're saying that he's going to have 2 amps hooked up to the same speakers?
No. He's got his PSB front, left, right speakers. Those are the main zones.
These are different ones?
Oh, his Mirage bookshelf speakers are separate. That's only for the turntable.
Oh, okay. I missed that. That part. Okay. And plus, you went all robot for a while, so I couldn't hear anything you were saying. But, okay, so the PSB speakers are just this home theater stuff. So
that's
this
home
is
theater, Atmos.
Got it. Yeah, this is going to work. Yeah, sure, why not?
Yep. Sure. So it makes use of that zone 2. All that was really missing was he needed a crossover. So the mini DSP does that just fine.
Yeah.
Tom is looking confused.
Oh, right. Okay, because this is just an amplifier. It's not a. It's not.
It's just an amp.
It's
the
not
tube amp
integrated.
is just an amp.
I was thinking if he could just plug straight, if he could bypass the home theater receiver altogether, but he can't because he needs a processor. Got it. All right. So he already ran one subwoofer cable to the back of his room for one of his subwoofers. He doesn't really want to run the second cable. So could he take the main zone subwoofer output and the mini DSP subwoofer output for that rear sub and combine them with a Y cable so they both use his existing subwoofer cable run? If not, what's the solution for having to run a second subwoofer cable? So what he's suggesting is using a Y so that he goes out from the mini DSP and out from the receiver into one cable, which then sends it to the back of the room, which he's already using.
Yes, he was wondering if he could do that. Don't do that.
I don't think that's a good idea.
No, that's not a good idea, because that just turned the subwoofer output of both of them also into inputs. Right. As everything is all just connected together. You don't want to do that. You need 2 separate signals being sent to the back of the room. But who says you have to use a physical cable? Yeah,
I was going to say, you don't have to. We suggested on this podcast a number of times, and it has worked in the past to send a wireless signal to the this is a different part of your room for your subwoofers. And I know is it Outlaw Audio that has one that we like, but that's a little pricey.
That's the one I like, but it's a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
There are less expensive options. I like the form factor. I like the fact that it has the automatic channel hopping so that it doesn't pick up any interference, but it's $120, so it's not crazy expensive, but it is more expensive than some of the other options. Dayton has one, which SVS actually sells, so SVS has deemed it good enough for them to use, but it's got the little, USB power adapter. And it's got a 3.5 millimeter stereo jack. So they're using adapter cables and a USB power adapter. And it all looks a little bit less slick, but it's less expensive. You can usually find them on Amazon for $65. So it's like half the price of the Outlaw Audio one. Outdoor Speaker Depot does also sell a wireless subwoofer kit for like under $50, but it's mono only. So you could actually just keep the subwoofer cable you already have, and then for the second one that you're adding, that would work. But if you just want to get rid of that subwoofer cable and make them both wireless, then either the Dayton one or the Outlaw Audio one, both of those are stereo. So one side of the stereo would be the subwoofer output from your Marantz, and the other stereo input would be the output from your Mini DSP. That'll still work. So 3 different options, 3 different price points. Pick your poison.
Chris, I can't believe how many questions we've gotten through. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, go all the way up to 24, so we're still not going to get them all.
That's all right. I'm not worried about that. Chris just bought an Oppo 203 to use with an Epson 6040 UB projector, and he needs some help with what the settings on the Oppo should be to get the best HDR performance. I don't know.
So, in all honesty, you can very likely just leave all the Oppo settings on auto.
Yeah, I was going to say it's Oppo. I mean, they usually make it pretty easy for you.
Yeah, because the 6040 UB, it does support HDR10. It does automatically detect HDR10 signals. So there's really no functional reason why you can't just leave the Oppo on auto. That'll work just fine. There's a couple of things that you could optionally change if you want to. One of them is the Oppo does let you set the color bit depth manually if you want to. If you have a very long HDMI cable and you're noticing any kind of bandwidth related problems, the signal's cutting out, you're getting sparklies, whatever. Normally, so the 6040 UB can accept a 12-bit signal. And so if the Oppo detects that the display can accept a 12-bit signal, it sends a 12-bit signal. It's not necessary. What's on the disc is 10-bit. So you could manually set the Oppo to 10-bit. That'll lower the bandwidth requirement a little bit. The 6040 UB does not have the HDMI bandwidth to accept a 4K 60 frames per second signal. It is limited to 24 or 30. That should be fine set on auto in the Oppo. It'll detect that. Right. It won't send it a 60 hertz signal, but you could manually set it to YCC 422 24 hertz in the Oppo if you want to. You could. That'll work.
I'd set it to auto, dude.
I'd set it to auto. The last one is you do have the option in the Oppo of using their strip metadata feature. Now, what that does is it preserves the Rec 2020 wide color, but it gets rid of the HDR10 if you want to use the digital cinema picture mode in the 6040 UB, which actually physically puts a color filter into the light path and cuts the light output by about half. But it gets you to 100% of DCI P3 color. So if you want to do that, you could use that strip metadata feature because that'll give you the full DCI P3 wide color, but you really don't have the brightness left for HDR anymore. So you could do that. However, if you just leave the Oppo in HDR mode and let the 6040 switch into HDR mode, it doesn't hit 100% of DCI P3, but it hits about 89, 90%, still wide color.
Well, it seems to be good enough for my sons. 89, 90% seems to be good enough for my sons in their grades, so it should be good enough for you too. Largely,
the only one you might consider is manually putting it to 10-bit, because that could be a thing, the length of the HDMI cable. It'll help lower the bandwidth.
Mark is interested in upgrading to a UHD player because although most of the recently remastered 4K releases include the regular Blu-ray, many do not include a new Blu-ray transfer, but rather the existing 1080p Blu-ray release. I have read that sentence like 10 times. I still have no idea what that means.
They did a new master. They remastered the film for the 4K.
Yeah.
But they didn't use that new remaster for the 1080p Blu-ray. They're just like, we already had a 1080p Blu-ray. We're throwing that in the package. We're not updating the Blu-ray release at the same time.
All right, so He has a JVC X500 projector and a Denon AVR 4520, both of which can accept 4K resolution signals, and the JVC is an E-Shift model, which supposedly can show some benefit from UHD Blu-rays. His concern is about Rec 2020 color and HDR, neither of which the JVC is equipped to handle. The Denon is also only HDCP 1.4 capable. He does have a monoprice HDCP 2.2 to 1.4 converter, but he's never used it. He bought the projector from someone who used the converter with the Philips player and said it worked very well, so he threw it in the box when he sold the JVC. So what are his options? Well, first of all, if you want to get like UHD, you're going to have to use that converter because you're not going to get 4K otherwise. Any hope of getting UHD content to the projector with colors and dynamic range that would be usable? With a UHD player, down converting a 4K disc to 1080p still be an improvement over regular Blu-ray. He's not really interested in buying an HD Fury. Yeah, so he can get 4K.
Yep.
And he can get...
But that's it.
That's it. He can't get anything
4K
else.
resolution, but he can't get wide color. He can't get 10-bit color. He can do 8-bit color only, and he can't get HDR. So this is an early 4K display. For all intents and purposes, that's what this is, an early 4K display.
So what, I mean, the benefits you're going to get, well, let's just say you don't do any of this stuff. That you just plug, you put the UHD thing in there, and it sends out a 1080p signal, because that's what it knows you can handle.
Yeah, that's what it would do without the HDCP converter. It would just send out 1080p.
You're going to get the improved sound, and you're going to get whatever goes along with that, and you're going to get whatever differences in the mastering. You're going to get that. Okay, so those are the two things that you're going to get for sure. Now, if you use this converter, which I've never even heard about before, much less used, you would then get also 4K, right? Yes. I mean, he should be able to get 4K.
Yeah, he'll get 4K resolution from the disc.
I mean, it should work. I mean, I don't see any reason why this is not a perfectly valid setup. I'm glad that guy threw that thing in the box.
Yeah,
because now you get 4K.
That was very nice. That was included. Otherwise, I probably would have been recommending an HD Fury. This is much less expensive, this monoprice HDCP 2.2 to 1.4 converter. All it does is the HDCP. It doesn't do anything to the signal other than that, but good enough as long as it works. So, yeah, really the only concern here is what's on the Ultra HD Blu-ray discs is by and large HDR10. Some of them have Dolby Vision, but that's on top of an HDR10 base layer. So what's really most concerning is how well does the Ultra HD Blu-ray player down convert HDR to SDR? That's really the concern, because all of them are capable of outputting an 8-bit SDR signal. That's like required. They have to. There's lots of 4K TVs out there that are not HDR and are 8-bit only. So all the players can do it. It's just, do they do a good job of converting that HDR down to SDR? Usually it looks too dim, but the Sony and the Oppo let you adjust it. I will say the Oppo, being a Dolby Vision player, when the disc actually has Dolby Vision on it, it uses Dolby's HDR to SDR conversion, which, in my opinion, looks much better. So that's nice, but it costs way more than the Sony. So, yeah, I mean, if you have the money on hand to get the Oppo, it's a great player that actually, like I mentioned when I reviewed it, I think its greatest benefit is when you're connecting it to a non-flagship type of display, because that's where all the benefits come out. Any player can just throw what's on the disc out to your display, and if your display can handle all of that, there's no difference from the Oppo. It's when you need to do down conversion like this that the Oppo really shines. But the Sony can do a similar job. It just can't do the Dolby Vision part of it for a much lower price. So get either of those players. Go ahead and use this HDCP 2.1 to 1.4 converter. You'll get 4K resolution. You'll just get 8-bit color and SDR. Should work. Dave
remembers back in the 90s when custom car audio systems were a big thing, and some of the installs had very large capacitors between the battery and the amplifiers. Were they doing the same thing that a power conditioner does in a home AV system? I don't know that much about car audio. I always assumed, and this is an assumption on my part, that this capacitor's whole job was that occasionally there was a large draw of power and you were going to kill your alternator or battery, whatever, trying to meet that all at once. So these capacitors' job was to essentially take that large draw very quickly, and then as the demands were less, they could be filled back up by the alternator and the battery and everything else.
Yeah, they're doing the same job as a capacitor's bank does in a big home theater amplifier. Yeah. So it's not a power conditioner. It's what capacitors are there for. They're kind of like you can think of them as like a power buffer, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly what Tom said. When there's a big transient peak and you suddenly need 400 watts right now, your car's alternator can't supply that, so you have this capacitor bank there on hand to do it. Yeah.
We are not going to read all this TED stuff. This is way too long.
Too much? Is there a shorter question we could sneak in?
I'm scrolling. Ryan's out too.
Sorry, Ryan. Sorry,
Mike.
Ted.
Mike's got pictures, and I'm up to D with him.
Yup.
Lance is on E.
Brandon's is pretty short.
Is up to C, but I think his is pretty short. Okay, let's do Brandon.
We could maybe do Brandon and Nick.
We'll see. Brandon. At first, Brandon was using a single subwoofer, and he thought it sounded great, but then he tried dual subs because we kept talking about it so much, and now he realizes that 2 subs are so much better. Thank you. Tell my wife I was right about something. Could it be even better than what he's experiencing now? He has limited placement options for the 2 subs, but if he were to measure and adjust, could he potentially improve his bass even more? Where are your subs in your room? Because that's how, I mean, are they in opposing corners? You have a rectangular shaped room. The answer is that it could be better, but it might not be worth it if you've already got a room that's rectangular and you have them optimally placed. Because we know that that moving them around is not going to make that much of a difference. So,
but if you, on the other hand, if you have an oddly shaped room, it's entirely possible that there is further improvement to be gleaned. Yeah. It's entirely possible.
It's possible. But you have to tell us more about your room, dude. So what microphone should he get if he decides he wants to pursue this? And would Rumiku Wizard and his laptop plus the mic be enough, or would he need something more? If you go to Cross Spectrum Labs, which we've talked about over and over again in this podcast, and talk to Herb, you will not need an external sound card for your laptop if you get a USB microphone. The UMic 1 is a USB one, though I don't know if Cross Spectrum Labs has those yet. I know he was having supply issues there, but you basically your laptop and a USB powered microphone will be enough.
Yep.
The problem is getting it, making sure you can get it. If not, then if you have something that has an XLR connection like a normal microphone, you will need an external sound card, which can be expensive, but it can also be very cheap. So it can be anywhere from $50 up to like as much as you want to spend.
Yeah, Dayton has a USB measurement microphone too. So which Cross Spectrum also calibrates and sells. So get a USB measurement microphone. Rumiku Wizard is free. Your laptop and Rumiku Wizard doesn't require a ton of resources, so that should be perfectly fine for taking your measurements.
So he's never done measurements and adjustment before, so what would he even be looking for in the measurements? How would he know when he needs to play with the phase, or does Odyssey take care of that automatically? So when you're doing your measurements, what you're looking for is, you're going to measure each sub individually to start with, and what you're looking for is, not a flat frequency response, because you're not going to get that. So don't be expecting. What you're looking for is not a lot of dips and humps, or the least amount. And where it dips in one seat, or where it has a hump in one seat, it should have a hump in all the seats. That would be nice if you could get that. Now, if you play them both at the same time, it's more important that you're getting uniform from seat to seat than is that you are getting flat from seat to seat before you run Odyssey.
Yeah, what you're really hoping to see, because what you need to do is measure in multiple locations. It doesn't necessarily have to be where there is actually a physical seat. And let's say you have, a love seat that faces forward and a couch that faces sideways. Don't measure all the seats in the couch where you never sit, right? Focus on your primary listening area, but you need to take multiple different locations within that primary seating area. And what you're hoping to find are overlapping measurements, right? So when you're in the left seat, the center seat, and the right seat, you're hoping that what you see in the measurements is the same for each of those. Doesn't have to be a flat line.
Right.
Just that the left, center, and right seats all overlap, all look the same. And what you'll find very likely is, the left seat is showing, let's say, a dip at 60 hertz, and when you measure that exact same setup, you didn't do anything other than move the microphone to the right seat. Sometimes you see a hump at 60 hertz.
Right.
What is your EQ going to do? If it tries to boost 60 hertz for the left seat, it made the right seat far too loud. If it tries to cut 60 hertz for the right seat, it made the left seat far too quiet. You need them all to be uniform. That's what you're hoping to find. Once it does that, then Odyssey can EQ it very effectively, because when you put the Odyssey microphone in all the places, it's like, hey, I'm getting the same measurement no matter where you put me. I can EQ this all day long. Very easy. So, yeah.
Lastly, we're going
to do... the phase. You
need to play with the phase,
yeah. You need to play with the phase when you cannot physically move your subwoofers anywhere else.
And you're trying to get them to all look the same.
And the measurements are not uniform.
Right.
When they're not uniform, then you have to, little by little, trial and error, adjust the phase of one of the subwoofers. Do so with the sub that is physically closer to you, because what the phase knob is doing is essentially adding a delay. So the subwoofer that's closer to you, little by little, adjust its phase, measure in all the seats. It's painstaking. It's a lot of measurements. It takes a lot of time. But what you're hoping to do is eventually hit on a spot on that phase knob where the measurements all line up. They're the same in the left and the center and the right seat. They all overlap.
All right. I know we're past 11, but we're going to do Nick, so we can be done with it. Nick's dad is looking to get a 65-inch TV and a soundbar for around $1,000. The TV and the soundbar for $1,000?
That's the hope.
65-inch?
It can kind of be done.
I'm not saying it can't be, but I'm just like, when I first got this question in the email, I thought he wanted a soundbar for about $1,000.
Oh.
I'm glad I didn't answer his question, because I had a real short answer for him. The primary seat is 11 feet away, and he'll be getting rid of the entertainment cabinet and simply mounting the TV and soundbar on the front wall. So we have a picture here on YouTube if you're looking. They're hoping that with the sale prices of a Vizio M series might be within the budget, so Nick is mostly asking about which soundbar to get. His dad doesn't need anything fancy if there's an opening on the right, so trying to bounce sound off the walls for pseudo surround isn't really in the cards anyways. He just wants it to be easy to use and sound good without costing too much. Any suggestions? Vizio makes soundbars, right? I mean,
yes.
Then I think their soundbars are pretty decent. Honestly, dude, I think that soundbars, and I hate surround bars, if they don't come from Yamaha, but I like sound bars that basically all they're trying to do is make it so that you can hear things better, which is what a lot of sound bars do. They're now 3 channels. They don't try to do surround sound or any of that nonsense. And Vizio makes some, and knowing if your dad's anything like my dad, he'll be happy that they're both the same brand. So I would go with whatever Vizio sound bar you can get. That's the same, because I mean you can usually actually attach them to the bottom of the TV, and they'll it makes sense. They'll be the same
well,
width
not for
and
the
everything.
65, but
yeah, or it's close or something.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. But I was going to point you to Yamaha, their YAS 207.
Yeah,
because I mean, if you look through all the reviews that are out there, like that's at the top of everybody's list for an under $300 soundbar. They're all like, yeah, just get the Yamaha because it sounds really clear.
Yeah.
It's
Yamaha was going to be my suggestion when it was $1,000.
Oh, sure.
I was like,
get sound projectors.
Yeah, with the digital sound projectors, and then don't worry about whether or not you're bouncing it around the room, because Yamaha is like magic. They can do phase, they can do bouncing, they do the whole thing. But yeah, I would be 100% behind a Yamaha purchase as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't oppose the Vizio. We're both on board with the Yamaha, so yeah, one of those will fit your needs. If you can't get the M series, I will say Vizio's E series. You can definitely get that for under that. The 65 inch is $800. Isn't that ridiculous? The E series actually is compatible with HDR10. It's not compatible with Dolby Vision. The M series is. The E series is not compatible with Dolby Vision, but is compatible with HDR10. However, I say compatible and not really capable because it tops out at about 250 nits, which really is not HDR.
Is the E series edgelit too?
No, the E series is backlit, but it's only 12 zones.
12 zones.
Which, in all honesty, you're better off turning off the local dimming and just having a full backlight. Because the full backlight is actually really nice because you don't get the weird, like, the corners are dimmer than the middle, or, that type of stuff that happens with edge-lit displays. So I really like that it has the full backlight. It's just 12 zones is not enough to be effective. Everything blooms like crazy.
Right.
But yeah, if what you want is a 65-inch TV for under $1,000, so you can also get the Vizio or Yamaha soundbar, the E-Series is there if that's the only way to hit the budget. It's really still a very nice 4K television, and you can still feed it an HDR10 signal.
All right. Well, that's our podcast.
Let's mention the names we didn't get to.
You do that.
Yes, I will. So that was let's see. We did get Dave, right? So it was Ted. I put a whole bunch of names at the bottom too. So there was Ted and Ryan, Mike and Lance. This is a lot of scrolling. And,
I told you.
Yes. And we answered Brandon. Okay, so those were the 4 full-out questions that I already written. And then we've received emails from Andrew, Byron, Robert, Mark, Michael, Boschko, and Earl. Not all of those were actually questions. A couple of them were comments. But we've got your emails just to let you know. Whew.
All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. So to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. These are people that support the podcast. Steve, Mike, Andrew, Lance, and Yuri have gone to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. We want to thank them. We also want to thank our 48 patrons over at Patreon, including Grant, Benjamin, Ted, and Christian. So thank all of you for supporting the podcast.
Yeah, Steve, Mike, Andrew, Lance, Yuri, thank you for using PayPal on our website there to support the podcast with a one-time donation. And then our 48 Patreon patrons, I really like that that's still going, and I'm glad they didn't do the stupid fee change thing. Grant, Benjamin, Ted, Christian, thanks for signing up to be new patrons for us. That's really nice.
We do appreciate it. And those monies will support this podcast and help us pay for all of the stuff that we're trying to do. So, on behalf of Rob and Austin, I want to wish everybody a happy new year.
We should thank our other listeners of the week. We missed Travis, Larry, and of course James for sending all that stuff. So yeah. Travis talked us up to SVS. Larry tried to help out Mike, which was really nice of him to do. And James sent in our awesome mouse.
And that's not the first time this has happened on the podcast where somebody's helped out somebody else.
That's right.
I will say that, James, I'm sitting on a different chair today. I was trying on a different chair. It's a very comfortable chair, but it's hard and it's not comfortable after 2 hours. So I am sitting on the mouse pads now, and I can say definitively that I feel that there is a qualitative and quantitative difference to sitting on the one that is the loudspeaker decoupler. I feel like that cheek is it's definitely receiving audible differences.
Yeah, it's better isolated.
Yes. Yeah. The other one's just a mouse pad. I mean, come on, let's be reasonable. It's only like $3.
And because we're visual creatures, it's probably the writing on top that made all the difference.
I think so. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.